Good evening.
Steve.
Is this on? My name is Andrea Agostino with Boston Gas Company. With me tonight is Shona Patasteas from VHB. We're here tonight for a notice of intent under just the Milton Town bylaw for subsurface archaeological testing, actually on town land in buffer zone surrounding our Milton gas take station off of Randolph Avenue. And the reason for that is we're currently in the design and initial permitting stages of federal, state, and local permitting of an inline inspection infrastructure at the station. And as part of the work that's required to support our federal and state permits, we need to have archaeological testing done, and that's under a permit with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And the areas we're proposing to test are, only in buffer zone, no wetland work, and they'll be hand dug by archaeologists, and there'll be 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter test pits, which is about 20 inches or so. They'll be dug down at least 30 inches or as deep as they can get with the rocky soil there. The materials would be sieved onto tarps and then backfilled immediately following the completion of the test pit. So it'll be very temporary work in nature, as I said, all in buffer zone. I'd like just Shona to just talk through the wetland resources on site for a minute.
Do you have a diagram or something? You want to put it up? That would be worthwhile. You could pull it forward a little bit. Maybe the audience can see it as well. Thanks. Good. Thanks. Yeah.
So the wetland resource areas were flagged on the site in June and July of this year, and then again in late November, kind of early December, just to kind of confirm the original boundary.
Just get a sense of where this is. This is on Randolph Ave as you're heading north on Randolph Ave. It's on the right-hand side.
It's on it's off of an access road. The address of the site is 750 Randolph Ave, but it's actually kind of behind the Granite Links golf course. If you are looking at a map, there's an access road that's across from Reed Street, and it's down maybe about a mile or so.
Close to a mile, and
Down
it's
that access road?
south of the golf course and just on the very edge of the property line of DCR land in the Blue Hills Reservation.
And what's the function of this facility?
It's a gas station, so it basically takes transmission gas from a Spectra pipeline and brings it down into lower pressures to then bring it out into the local neighborhoods.
Okay, thanks.
And it's been there in the 60s. The site is within National Register of Historic Places property that was designated back in the 70s. So the station itself and the pipelines were constructed 10, 15 years before the known existence of the archaeological sites in that area.
Wasn't there a deal, I shouldn't say that like it's a bad word, an arrangement made with with the Historical Society when the cell tower was going in, and they actually drew a line essentially right down the road. And on one side it was not going to be natural heritage, and on the other side it was.
From what we've seen from the mapping from the Mass Historical Commission, they did draw that line, but it's 2 polygons, and they both encompass our site as well as the town land and the Blue Hills land. So they did draw a line along the access road, but both sides are still mapped as a resource.
Oh, definitely for a resource, but for I thought, and when I said arrangement, I wasn't being cynical, but it actually made it somewhat easier to define, to separate out that which was potentially archaeologically sensitive
Okay.
from that which was the resource area.
I'm-
And
yeah.
where is your testing going? Which side of that line is
sure.
your testing going?
There's a filing in, a map in the filing. It's basically not actually our proposed work, which will eventually be before the commission is down in this area, but the actual testing is up in these areas of kind of undisturbed land surrounding the station. And the reason behind that is that the Historical Commission has determined that where we're proposing our work was extensively disturbed by the station and pipeline construction, but they want to know the boundaries of the
I'm sorry,
resources.
can you use that?
Oh,
Thank you very much.
sure. I love microphones. So the Mass Historical Commission has determined that where we're actually proposing our eventual work is within disturbed areas and doesn't have any sensitivity. doesn't require any further testing, but that for the nature of our project and to better define resources on site for our eventual permitting, we need to do test pitting in these two areas. And as I said, it'd be 20 to 25 test pits in buffer zone amongst these two areas.
Okay. So you're proposing work eventually in the area, and as a result of that, Mass has gotten involved? Is that it?
Right, we have to apply to them for a permit to do the work, but that's where it's kind of odd, is that our work is down here and is not actually in these areas, but because the whole area is mapped, they want us to do testing in these areas that are relatively undisturbed to confirm presence, absence.
They're taking advantage of the fact that you're doing work to
Yes.
probe a different area.
Yes, I'm trying not
great.
to say that, but yes.
Yeah.
But that's why I asked the question, because my memory is that when we had the cell tower for years.
I've heard about it, but I wasn't involved.
And the
right.
line was something like this. And on this side, Mass Historic said, you know, you have to abide by whatever findings we make. On this side, they get kind of a pass. I say they, the applicant,
Okay.
which was town. So I understand why the testing is taking place over here. I don't understand why the testing is done here. And I don't know how far that line went. It may have stopped at the gas station. And I know you said your work is over here.
Right.
But I'd just like to go back and, I think what you're doing is good. But I'd like to go back and look at what the original understanding was as to where that line was turned. I thought it was an arbitrary line
Yeah, and
that had been
right.
negotiated.
Right, and I don't
Yeah,
know
that's my
that Boston
recollection
Gas
as well.
Company was involved at all in that
No, I don't think
discussion.
they were.
So we don't have any, all we know is that those are the areas that we've been tasked to test because they're high sensitivity. So apparently we're not getting a pass that may have been, previously arranged for the the cell tower? Wind turbine.
Wind
Wind
turbine.
turbine, right. All right, that's still accessible, isn't it, the wind turbine file?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It may not affect you, but I thought that there was an understanding between Mass Historical and the town.
If you want to continue,
Sure.
we've been interrupting you a lot.
Okay, so there are two different resource areas that we flagged on this site. They're really part of the larger general system. There's this area to the west of the station, which contains the town vernal pool. I believe it's a potential vernal pool with natural heritage, but it's it's a recognized vernal pool with the town. And then there's kind of a larger. It's two-part. There's some cedars in here, but there's the cleared right-of-way, which actually currently contains an awful lot of Phragmites. None of the work that the archaeologists are proposing is within the wetland resource areas, but the buffer zones to all of these resource areas pretty much encompass the entire station. There's a very small kind of V-shaped area here that's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. You'll see. It's a little bit easier to see, I think, in the mapping package. This orange line is a 100-foot no disturbance zone off of the vernal pool. Because of the drought this year and the time of year in which we went out to take a look at what the vernal pool is, we didn't quite flag the extent, the boundaries of the vernal pool because we didn't, we weren't there at the right season. So instead what we flagged is kind of the mean annual high water line, and that was evident by moss rings on trees, by undercut banks, by water-stained leaves. There was quite a number of primary indicators out there to be able to mark out the extent of high water. So we tried to give the mean annual high water line as more of a conservative estimate of where the vernal pool would be to provide that 100-foot buffer. So in part, what we're asking for tonight is not just through the wetland bylaw, we're also looking for a variance from the non-disturbance regulations to be able to perform the archaeological testing.
Where's the line from the vernal pool? I understand what you just said about mean high water.
Yep. So this blue line here is the vernal pool, the mean annual high water. The green line is the extent of the wetland itself, and this orange line here is the 100-foot buffer or 100-foot non-disturbance zone off of the vernal pool. You also got
And-
this kind of
and-
yellowish line, which is the 25-foot off of the wetland.
And where are the proposed test sites?
Proposed test sites are kind of this upland area here, and then just north of the station, there's a bit of a knoll here. You can see it in the topo lines. It's a good dramatic slope down to the wetland off of the eastern edge of the station and a little bit coming over to the north. So they'd be looking to do their testing in this knoll here, and then at the side of the access road here.
But they're not marked?
So the
The actual
locations?
test site? You just gave us an area, but do you have an actual location for?
Quantity?
You could put on a map for us and say, that's where the test is?
As I understand, they don't actually, there's a little bit of field judgment as well. So when they're out in the field, you know, when they're looking at putting in the test pits, and Dre, you can
They wing it.
correct me if I'm
Because of
wrong.
the trees that are present, it's really basically having to, in the field, make a call where to test around the existing trees and vegetation.
And
So
rocks.
we could plot them out and mark them out, but then when they actually got into the field and had to decide where to dig to avoid tree roots, it would be a field call.
And describe again what the test pit consists of? What
Sure,
is he doing?
it's hand dug, and it's 20, there'll be 20 to 25 of them, and there'll be 50 centimeters, so they're about just under 20 inches by 20 inches. And they'll go down, 36 inches if they can, but in this rocky soil, we're not expecting to be able to go down that far. They'll be hand dug, they'll do sometimes 5 to 10 a day, but in this case with the stony soil, we're expecting maybe 5, so it'd be up to a week's worth of work. They're backfilled immediately once they've sieved through all the material, and the material is sieved on tarp, so there's not, wanton material around the site. It'd be backfilled immediately into that hole when it's done.
And you were there Saturday?
I was not.
You were not?
No.
And you were not?
I was not.
And I was not?
No.
All right. The reason for my
We've been
questions
here
about,
before, though. We know this area in connection with,
I've been there 50 times.
yeah, exactly.
Was, yeah.
Yeah, but the reason for my concern is that we've had some projects that were altered by Mass Historical after the fact. We had a DCR bike path, and they went in and they dug some of these test pits. Said, oh, no, you can't, you can no longer have the bike path, and we had to move it. And to move it, we had to take down a number of very mature trees. So that's why I'm concerned with that line. And if, for instance, I don't know what their buffer area is. If you find, and I'm not being facetious, but if you find some, tools of Native American artifacts or something, is there an area that, you cannot have a project within? Because it may affect your project. It's got nothing to do with us.
Right. As I understand it, because of the mapping and because it is a National Register site, any work in these areas that requires a federal permit, or in this case, a MIPA permit, would require archaeological review by the Mass Historical Commission. So,
That's why I asked you the question, because that's actually, it didn't happen. And that's why there was a negotiated settlement of that. And that's that, I call it an arbitrary line. And that was not true for the wind turbine. That line was very significant, and all of the archaeological testing was on the, I don't know what side that is, north? I don't know which way it is.
Here.
the west
All
side.
right, so as I'm looking at the left-hand side of your picture, that was their jurisdiction, and they gave up their so-called jurisdiction on what would be north of the roadway getting in there. So I just want you to know what you're getting into.
Right,
Because if we say, oh, yes, you go ahead, and all of a sudden you find an arrowhead, and all of a sudden your project stops.
right. And well, and then the interesting thing is they didn't ask us to test where the actual proposed project is. So we gave them
Right.
that
Well,
location
what the
because they
hell?
feel so extensively disturbed. So we deal with them quite often for other projects. So in this case, I don't fully understand why we have to test in areas we're not proposing work, but in a way I do get it. But so I'm not necessarily concerned about what would happen with our project because they're not actually having us test where we're doing our work. So I don't see how that could,
So it's irrelevant.
right.
It is irrelevant, and whether they make it an issue or not, that's the point. Right?
Right.
Well, that's why I asked if there's a jurisdictional component to it. Like if you find an artifact, in point one, is there a, 100 feet or 200 feet from that point that you cannot do something?
Right. And no, there's no real buffer that I've seen on past projects. It's just we're already on the hook to consult with them because of the federal and state permitting we have to do. So as I see it, it's not that any findings will force us to consult with them. We already are, that's already triggered by the potential, the future project we want to do.
So this notice of intent is only for the test pit, it's not?
Correct.
It's not for the, is
No.
it jurisdictional where you are?
Yes,
Is that a second notice that will?
That'll be later this spring, yes, or later this winter. So this filing is just for, because as I said, it was on town land, so we went to the selectmen for their approval, and that's when they had said, oh, by the way, you have to file under our bylaw. So that's why we're here tonight. So the actual project will be late this winter, early spring, when we have everything fully together.
All right, in order to get an exemption from the bylaw, we need a professional engineer to sign off, it's pretty simple, but just to sign off that there is no significant adverse impact. And from what you've described, it doesn't look like, with basically a 20-inch square.
Right, right.
That's going to be backfilled immediately. I don't see a significant adverse impact.
Okay.
But we do require that somebody sign off, stamp it, and say those are the magic terms, no significant adverse impact.
Sure, okay.
Okay. So, I mean, we can vote on it depending upon other questions.
There was one thing Arthur requested, is when they're done with the report, the commission gets a copy of what the findings are.
Yeah, that sounds
Even
good.
though it's not public information,
Yeah.
that the commission at least gets to see.
And the selectmen did already request a copy too, so we can provide one to both
Okay.
Fine.
offices. As well, it just have to be held only to the town officials because of the confidential information that may or may not be in the report based on our findings.
What confidential information?
Now that everyone,
Like, we found an
Public.
arrowhead?
It's a public body. What do they have that's
I have
confidential?
no idea, but we've
Political.
confronted this before, so I know what you're talking about. All right, any questions from
No,
commissioners?
sounds
So,
good.
so what you're talking about right now is really just these test pits, and you're actually going to come back to us with the proposal for the project that's
Correct.
going to be done. This is really just a precursor to that, to try to get this out of the way.
exactly.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully before winter sets in, although with this past
With-
week, I don't know if we'll be able to do it as soon as possible, but that's what we're hoping for.
Right, okay.
Are there any questions, comments, or suggestions from abutters or members of the public? Hearing none, anything else?
No.
We should make it contingent upon receipt of a professional engineer
Absolutely.
indicating that there is no significant adverse impact.
And a sketch that shows the proposed locations for the, what do you call them, pits? You don't call them pits?
Test pits?
Test pits,
Yeah.
yeah, for the test pits. Just a sense of the quantity and the sense of the locations that are being proposed. It could be as simple as that with just ovals indicating. And
We do have, as part of the NOI, there was this map that shows in the pink there.
Oh,
So
perfect.
that's
Yep, no, that's good. Yep,
These areas, yeah.
That's good,
Yeah.
okay.
That's
yeah,
good.
thank you.
Good enough. Okay, motion? Motion
Moving.
to allow,
Well, we have two votes. We have the
One
first one
town.
on the bylaw.
Yeah.
As to,
It's only done by the bylaw, it has been found.
oh, that's right.
why is it not filed with?
The
DEP?
work's exempt under the Wetlands
Exempt.
Protection Act.
Yeah, that's right, okay.
Mm.
All right. So we just have the one vote then, under the bylaw.
Okay. Motion to allow the test pits by National Grid.
A second.
All right, with the proviso that we receive a copy of the report, and we also, what else do we need?
Professional engineer with
Yes, the letter. Okay.
And this is going to happen right away. The intent is to do this as soon as possible.
Correct.
We've only got about 3 weeks.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ground's gonna freeze.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Good, done. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We haven't heard back from,
No, my guess is that,
it's not,
right,
I would say she would be here by now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And you may want to
You're welcome to wait, and we've put a call in to, and we haven't,
But we haven't heard back.
we haven't heard anything back.
Appreciate that. I mean, we're okay waiting a little bit longer.
Okay.
All right, good. Next on the agenda, number 3, notice of intent at 693 through 711 Randolph Avenue. This is a continued hearing?
Is that me?
It is, Jim. Yeah.
You're getting paid for this, right, Jim?
Good evening, Jim Burke with Tassell Burke and Associates, representing, I guess, the Hollands with regards to 693, 711 Randolph Ave. And the update is we're still waiting for the HAC. I'm told the HAC is going to start hearing testimony in April. So I know
Wow.
the town.
Was this the one where there were cross motions for summary judgment?
Correct,
And
yep.
both were denied?
Yes,
So it's going forward for the hearing?
exactly right. So
No testimony until April?
yeah.
Okay.
So if it occurs earlier,
Just to let the public know, we're talking about Meg Lane, as it's
yeah,
called.
the 40B
40B proposal.
project on Randolph Ave,
How many units are now being proposed by Holland?
90. Is it 90? Was
Yes,
it
it's
72?
90.
Yeah, 90.
And I think the comprehensive permit was for 35,
36, I believe.
36?
Yeah.
All
So,
right. And also, this is the one in which we denied the permit under the bylaw,
correct.
and then we deferred consideration under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right, and we're waiting to find out what happens with the court proceedings, and then we'll move forward with the, your hearing subsequent to that.
Understood. Any questions?
So we can defer this to after.
Yeah,
like some-
actually, I can put a letter together requesting maybe a hearing in May. Is that
That
something?
would be good. That would be good. Any questions from members of the public, abutters, or concerned citizens? Hearing none? Let's go in. You in the next one? Oh, okay, all right, thanks. Hearing none, then we shall defer this, and we anticipate putting this back on the agenda in May. Next on the agenda, number 4, which is abbreviated notice of intent at 739 Blue Hill Avenue.
Again, good evening, Jim Burke with the Tassell Burke and Associates. I'm here representing Michael Rex, who is owner of a parcel that is accessed off of Blue Hill Ave via a common drive that services 3 other lots besides his own. Wetlands were delineated by Scott Morrison. We went out there and located it using a field instrument, and basically we've got an existing driveway, and we're just looking to kind of pull the pavement and repave. So,
They weren't going to pull the pavement, they're going to top it, right?
really, we looked at it, and it's just, my bad. I should have taken a better look at it.
Yeah.
You can't top it. It's all rutted and potholes, and you're gonna have to pull the pavement, regrade it, and put the top back down. Doesn't change really much of the procedure, because we're gonna still put the erosion control, same locations that were proposed earlier, and basically remove and replace.
Same border, you're not widening or anything?
No, you really can't. It's, we had the site walk Saturday, and the road itself is maybe 14 feet, maybe, and it's mounted gravel off the original surface. So you have a culvert. You have a culvert in this location right here, and there was actually suggestion of replacing that because there is a concern of overtopping the road in some certain situations. There is also an incident of emergency access because of that particular situation. There was an unfortunate incident with one of the previous owners that didn't have the proper attention, given the fact that access was so limited
Previous
here.
owner prior to Dr. X?
Yes.
that
Actually, I
goes
think
way-
Dr.
That goes way back.
No, I think Mr. Rex was there at the time, but I think it was a different owner.
Oh,
I'm sure he's here tonight, so he can explain the situation. But bottom line is that, Once we get the construction going, it's hard to get a look at that culvert, and we'll make an assessment at that point whether we can replace it, whether it should be replaced or just cleaned out.
When you say replace, the goal would be to enlarge it.
I would think that you'd probably want to double it up. I'm not so, I don't think you can put a larger culvert in
Right.
without changing the grading.
Right.
But
But
you
you're
can
trying to
cer-
improve the flow.
yeah, I think you can put, just double up the culvert.
Now, I wasn't there on Saturday, but I talked to Arthur, and one of the commission members, Arthur Doyle, who is not here this evening, was present, and as a subcommittee to report back to us, and he did
Right.
report back.
Oh, good.
And I don't want to confuse 739 with 593 Blue Hill Avenue, but, so I don't want to misquote
Sure.
either you or him, but at one point, did you say that you thought that 2 culverts would be better than 1?
Yes.
Or was that a reference to the other site?
No, I think
Site.
honestly, you look at the the watershed, for lack of a better term, that's up gradient. The one down gradient is much larger and can certainly handle flows. You can see this would get stopped up easily. So I think actually doubling up the culvert would be a wise thing to do.
Then why don't we put that into the order? I mean, this is an abbreviated notice of intent.
Right. The thing is, you don't know. I don't know what the condition of the existing culvert is. I don't even know what size it is. I'm assuming it looks like a 10-inch concrete pipe.
Can you find out?
Once we get all the briars and everything out of there, yeah, it's silted up considerably.
So can you tell me 739, and I'm looking at pictures with 751. Are these pictures of the culvert? The number doesn't match. but
Yes.
Close.
Yeah. Well, 751 is one of the houses that is serviced by the driveway.
All right, there's a group home that I think is owned by the Milton
So the driveway
Housing
services.
Commission?
There's 739, 751, 723, and where's the other one? 705, which is up here. Is that
All right,
correct?
so this is
that
a
correct?
picture of the culvert then? Is that correct?
That's the color.
All right, and whose responsibility is it to clean the culvert?
It's a private culvert. It's the responsibility of the owners of the driveway.
And is that an easement, or is there?
There is an easement, yes.
So there is an owner who also has provided an easement to
It's
others to
actually,
use it?
the easement,
Is it a-
the easement goes over Milton Housing Authority and Blumen Reich property, as well as Hiles and Rex. And
But isn't the problem, if this is clogged and we wanted to fix it, who would we go to?
you'd go to the 4 homeowners that service the driveway.
And I just want to make sure that they're not going to go like this, because
They're
who,
together tonight.
Oh, good.
And they're looking to share the cost of all the construction.
If I may add just a word.
could you please come forward and use the mic, if you would? That would be very helpful to us.
I'm Michael Rex, I'm at 739 Blue Hill Ave, and all of that wetland that goes between the driveway and Bradley was given, I believe, by Mike Salamando in perpetuity to the Conservation Commission. That's where the culvert is. So you may own the culvert. You may. He either gave it to you, or he gave it to another conservation group of some kind or other, but he gave away the development rights on it, so it may be your responsibility. We don't mind doing it, though. You know, we can do it together. It's not such a big deal. It can be examined, cleaned out if possible, and if not, we're happy to do whatever you recommend to remedy the situation.
Who is the applicant?
I'm the official applicant, but we're all 4 neighbors are involved and are paying for this.
All right, so if it's a shared cost for the driveway improvement, then could it also be a shared cost and responsibility for making sure that the culvert is maintained, cleaned?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know what maintaining it would involve. And I
Just
don't know what you're, yeah,
cleaning it out.
yeah.
See, we don't have a
The idea
staff.
is to let water flow through this and
Water
not have
does
it
flow
clog
through
up.
it. It does flow through, but it sediments up. It's
Slowly.
going to do that again.
It'd be like going down the bathtub with a whole bunch of stuff stuck in it.
It's not that bad, but it needs to be cleaned out. That's very simple. So I don't know what to say about that. I don't know who officially owns it or has that responsibility. But you could put that in your order of conditions, because we're ready to accept whatever solution you come up with.
All right, because I actually don't know anything about the Conservation Commission owning any land, and if Mike Salamando put a restriction on his land, non-development, that doesn't necessarily give us any rights, other than to enforce
He may
the
still own it.
non-development.
He may still own it, even though the development rights have been given away. And I don't know, in the whole business of deeding or giving away development rights to conserve land in perpetuity, the ownership may remain
It
with
does.
someone, and, but what kinds of responsibilities they incur by that, I don't know. It may be that the culvert isn't meant to be disturbed. It's another possibility. But anyway,
Natural heritage.
I feel sure that whatever you decide, if you think it's legal for us to have that responsibility, then we would take it.
I do, and can you speak with confidence for all the members participating,
I
the
think
owners
so,
participating?
yeah.
You think so?
As long as I survive. Culvert has been there since 1976, and the south side of it is a permanent wetland, a lot of sediment on the bottom, so some sediment is going to build up again that will have to be attended to at some point in the future.
Well, I think if it sounds like you're willing to accept the responsibility on behalf of all of the applicants or all of the owners that are participating in this.
Jim,
I
can you
think
just
we
show
do.
us on this, where is that culvert exactly?
It's
On
really right on that
on that one?
property line. It's
So halfway up,
existing 10-inch culvert.
okay.
Between flags B4, B5, and A5 and A6.
All right. And Kathy, was everybody pretty comfortable with those flags?
Yes.
That's Scott Morrison?
Scotty Hall, yeah.
And when was that done?
Say it again?
When was that done?
When was it flagged?
About midsummer, I think.
Of this
think-
year?
Was it? Yeah, it was this year.
You want to grab the mic?
I believe it's in the reports in the announcement tab.
Okay.
Could you, just for humor me, can you talk a little bit about the process of putting down the asphalt and whether they're using oil for that and whether we need to be concerned about controlling that oil going through?
You know, you're gonna be using, I'll throw out a 2.5-inch binder,
Yeah. I'm
type
thinking of
1
the roller,
mix.
the
Oh,
compactor.
Yeah, well, then it'll be just it'll be a small one. It's not gonna be the street grader, but there shouldn't be any major releases
Don't
of
they
oil.
oil those when they run them?
Yeah.
To keep the binder from
So
sticking?
it's from sticking, yes. So, but you're still gonna be having the wattles will certainly prevent any sort of oil from getting off that pavement.
How wide is it?
14
12,
feet?
14 feet, 12 to 14 feet. You're gonna go up with a
That's a
spreader.
legitimate
I
concern.
don't know whether the wattles actually control that. I mean, I would assume that they do something. Is there a certain a period of time that's going to wash off that we, in terms of the oil, that they're going to use oil to put down the thing,
Right,
right?
right.
And I assume it's going to wash off in a certain period of time, so that the controls need to be there for that period of time.
I would imagine that, yeah, absolutely.
Do we know what that is? Do we realistically know how long that?
I would think, the first rainfall is gonna take it, push that oil off the pavement. That oil too, it just, it'll, puddle
Right.
a little bit onto the pavement, some of it will run off a little bit, but those straw wattles, they'll pick up
Absorb it.
all of that, yeah, they'll absorb all of that. And if you keep them there, you could actually, keep them there for a month afterwards.
Right.
And if you want to put that in the order of conditions, I think that'd be sufficient.
Are you signing off as PE that No significant adverse impact?
Yeah, I forgot that, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
All right, other questions, commissioners? Are there abutters? Would you come forward, sir, and state your position? Good evening.
Evening. I'm Bill Walsh. I live at 152 Bradley Road, and I'm directly upstream from the road that they're going to be paving. So I've lived there since 1990, and in 2010, when we had the rains that came for, we got all the rain, we got more water in 2 weeks than we did normally in 6 months. My house flooded, and it's because the culvert is blocked and the water didn't go down, it went out, and the water didn't come in my basement, it came up. The groundwater increased. I was out there this summer looking at the culvert. If it's been there since 1976, no one's touched it since 1976. It's not cleaned, it's not maintained, and I took those pictures today. I
Oh,
went
these
out-
are yours?
Yeah, those are mine. I
Oh,
went
good,
out,
okay.
I walked out, took the pictures and sent them to everybody. I want them to get this done. I have no problem with it. They live there, they have to get access to it, but no one's taking responsibility for the culvert. No one's cleaning the culvert. And I had a tremendous amount of damage to my house directly because of that road that goes directly through a wetland and has about 8 inches of capacity to let water flow through, and it didn't make it. And so I'd like to have a professional engineer go in, look at the facility, see what has to be done in order so water flows through and does not create problems in the yard. And if they do that and they make it so the water flows down, I'm fine with it. And if someone maintains it, great, even better for me. But right now, no one's touching it, no one's doing anything to it, and it's creating problems for me. And until that happens, I don't want this to move forward.
Do we need a second culvert?
I don't know if you need a second culvert, you need an engineer to come in and tell you what you need to put in there, because it might be a second culvert, it might be 2 pipes, it might be, I don't know what it is. I'm not an expert, but all I know is that that is clogged, and it's not big enough to handle the amount of water that, so they talk about 100-year flood. I don't know if that was a 100-year flood, but it was a lot of rain in a small amount of time, and my basement had 4 feet of water in it. And I've never had water for 20 years. And it wasn't because rain came in, it didn't leak in, it came up. And that's because the water didn't flow down.
But have you done any drainage calculations for
No.
this?
And I talked to Mr. Walsh, was it yesterday? But
Excuse me.
we can, if you're gonna size a culvert, you wanna pick a storm event to size it for. Typically, Mass Highway sizes culverts for roadways for 50 years. Some towns will do it for, they'll have specific regulations that'll do it for a 100-year storm event. Nothing's bigger than the 100-year storm event. What you're gonna have to do is size the watershed that flows into that area. I'd probably model the pond in front, model the pond in back, and see what's required. It's not hard, just time.
Right. And then they'll be able to evaluate what you have to whether it's adequate
Right.
or whether you need to expand it, right?
Well, the difficulty with that storm was not the culvert, the entire road was breached by 3 or 4 feet of water. That whole basin just filled up with water. It wouldn't have made any difference whether there was a culvert there or not.
I think the culverts downstream are clogged too.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's,
Well,
again, that's
but the
that's
real-
an issue in my home.
The real problem that may affect you in the future is there's an old granite box culvert under Blue Hill Avenue that's probably been there since it was a turnpike. And we had that, after that storm, we had Department of Public Works clean that out.
State.
Yes, state. That was a struggle to get them to do that, but it affected everybody that lived in the neighborhood. We could only get around the neighborhood in kayaks and canoes, literally. for a while. So it's downstream where the big problems are.
Yeah, but,
And-
but I'm upstream, so, I mean,
Yeah, I know you're
I get
upstream.
it, and your road cuts directly across
I know.
Trout Brook. And,
Yeah.
and there's and you see the pictures, it's not being maintained, so
Yeah.
as long as it's maintained, listen,
Yeah, I
it's gonna
cer-
happen, I get it, I'm not worried about that.
agree
But
with it.
someone's gotta take care of it, someone's gotta be responsible for it, and engineer has to go in and take a look and say, okay, this is what we need to put here.
Yeah, that's fine with us. I'm just saying that
If
that
that-
was a
if that
very
gets
big
done, I'm
problem
good.
at that point.
Right,
It wasn't because of the culvert wasn't flowing.
Well, the culvert didn't help.
What about this culvert? I mean, do you know that, I'm just looking at the picture, so, and I didn't see it Saturday. But I mean, do you have a sense that, I don't know how deep this is, what the cover is to the roadway
There's probably
surface?
maybe, yeah, I mean, with the driveways, you probably maybe have a foot to no more than 18 inches of cover over the pipe.
And what about for trash trucks? I don't know if they go in there, but what about
No,
oil delivery trucks?
Oil delivery trucks and UPS and used to pick up our trash. We don't have any services anymore in that neighborhood, but they come up and down all day long, and it has not depressed the road over where the culvert is. So the road is sound there.
All right, I just want to make sure that in addition to, if you size it and you say, one is good or two is better, I just want to make sure that if new ones are going in or an additional one is going in, that it has sufficient cover and/or structural integrity, so it doesn't get crushed.
The Class 5 concrete will take care of it.
Wouldn't we wanna have an engineer come in and look at it and decide
That's
how?
that's what
Jim is
that's
an
what it
engineer,
is.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
But you need to do the evaluation.
yeah, I mean, like I say, not knowing what, his property, what his elevation's at, it may not have anything to do with this particular culvert. It could actually be what Mr. Rex says, because the driveway elevation could be, the same elevation as your property. I just don't know. Milton GIS has enough information where I could analyze it and figure it out.
All right, so y'all do the hydrological modeling, size the culvert,
For?
for what? To ensure that,
No, I mean, no.
Yes,
For
well,
100
what-
years.
Okay,
100,
thank you.
100,
All right.
yeah, okay, Kathy, did you get that? That's a 100-year storm?
What was the first one?
The hydrological modeling, just to
Watershed.
make sure that we can size the culvert, and it may be one or two, and we have to have some assurance that there's enough cover or structural integrity that it's not going to get crushed by a.
Class 5 concrete allows for a foot of cover over for an H20 load.
There's nothing at this point, based on what you've said, that would imply that needed to be done. But if you do your evaluation and find that it does, then that should be included.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have no idea what this is, but it doesn't look like,
That's the culvert.
That's
no, I understand.
Yeah,
that,
I don't know what it
it's
is. I don't know what the
It's just
material is.
aluminum,
Corrugated.
no, sorry, not aluminum.
No,
a
it's
metal
galvanized steel.
Galvanized steel pipe that runs under, and it's mostly full. I mean, there's pictures of both sides of it, so.
Correct, and I, that's what I understand, but you're talking about Class 5 concrete, and that's not what this is.
No,
So you're going to put new ones in.
sounds like it. Well, like I say, we'll find out what.
You might just be able to top what you have,
Right.
right? If that's of adequate size and you're just trying to reinforce it, you might be able to top that with concrete. You get what you need and
Right.
then,
We'll see what kind of condition it is. Corrugated steel's pretty tough too. So, and it's a short length of pipe. It's not a very long length of pipe.
Right.
So I'll evaluate what H20 load is required, and we'll go from there.
could you also put together a maintenance plan?
Sure.
Just so that
I mean,
they can-
honestly,
so-
maintenance.
Just so that they can sign off on it and that there's no question about what needs to be done on a basis and.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a router truck, just any septic guy can go in there and swab that out, no problem.
Okay, but if
It
the
hasn't been done
maintenance
since
plan,
'76, so I don't know.
maintenance plan should say how often that's going to be done.
Yeah,
Just so
I think-
that there's no confusion going forward.
Right.
Okay.
But if there is,
You know, I assume you do know what he's saying, but we talk in O&M plans, operation and maintenance plans all the time.
we hadn't considered that, but we'll, as I say, we'll do whatever you guys recommend. But for a 100-year storm, it's not, I know where the flood line is for a 100-year storm.
It's gonna go right over
It's
the
still
top
over
of
the
the
drive.
driveway.
It's gonna be over the
completely
driveway.
irrelevant for a 100-year storm.
So-
And it might show that,
Right.
you know, and your property might actually be above the elevation of this, and if this was under 3 feet of water, that might explain why the whole level changed. So you need to run the evaluation to determine what needs to be done and what's gonna be
It has
relevant.
potential of like chasing a tail.
Right.
But if Mr. Rex is right and the down gradient culvert that goes onto Blue Hill Ave is causing the issue, then
Well, that's what you
That's
should,
a
it still doesn't
stage.
change the fact that
Yeah.
we should probably build a,
that's what you.
a larger,
go over and
better
take a
culvert
peek
at this
at.
location.
I've been over there.
Time before you do the work.
I was over there this summer.
All right, can you just go over, so Kathy gets this, the different addresses? You went through them before. I know it's 739, what are the other ones?
70
They're actually on
Okay.
the intent, I can get them up.
705, 723, 739, and 751, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Good, anything else? Any other questions?
No.
Abutters, members of the public, concerned citizens? Right.
So you're comfortable, so we're asking him to evaluate the watershed area and then the elevation of your house and the size of the culvert, so that we have all the information going forward. I would recommend that you come back to the next discussion, because that's really gonna be getting to the meat and potatoes of it.
When will that be?
January, can you do it a month?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The 17th of January.
January 17th. And they're gonna, Jim will have information to present based on their findings, and we'll have, this kind of discussion, but with factual information.
Will I get notification of January 17th?
Sorry, that's your answer.
I won't.
No, but
Okay.
this is it.
Okay, so I need to just write it down.
You write it down, right.
Yeah, you can call me.
It is on the town website,
Yeah,
but it's
right.
not like you'll
Right.
get another green card.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay,
All
great.
right.
I'll be
So
back.
So we'll continue this until January 17th?
I'll see you then.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Rex?
Yeah. My feeling on this is that this isn't something that's gonna be a problem. It just needs to be resolved, so we can resolve all the issues that are in it.
Well, I
and
appreciate
we'll
the input,
proceed.
and that's,
I
we'll
don't
do,
want to have a problem either, I just want to make sure it's done,
Yeah.
done right and
We'll do
and
everything.
maintained and all that.
Do everything that needs to be done, and
whatever you ask us to do, we'll do.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, you
Merry
too.
Christmas, all right, Merry Christmas.
Michael, so
Yes,
could we jump
Yep,
in and
sure.
take like 5 minutes
Yep.
just to
definitely.
ask questions?
Yep.
All right, then I'll recuse myself.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So, I think
You just
Mark will
wanna intro- yeah.
introduce us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
we
our
know that-
apologies, I think there's some family issues going on.
Understood.
We-
So we're not going to ask for any decisions, we're just take 5 minutes of your
Yep.
time just to see if you have any questions of us, so we can be more prepared next
Yes,
meeting.
perfect. And I have a bunch, I went through other documents, I have a bunch of questions.
We do.
I really don't want to go through them. I just want to tell you I basically want to read off my list to you. I don't think that anything that I have here requires you to produce any more documents or anything. It's really just about concerns that I have or that we have, and it's they're just points of discussion. So I don't think there'll be an issue in terms of going forward. It's just so you know what we're planning on talking about at the next meeting. And I was hoping to do this today, but obviously, so,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
we understand that things happen, so for the record, I'm Mark Mastriani, I'm with Pulte Homes. We're the applicant of the notice of intent for Milton Woods. And with me tonight is Mickey Marcus from New England Environmental and Mike Rosati from Marchand and Associates. Mickey's office helped us with the notice of intent and the environmental permitting. And Mike's office continues to help us with all of the plan work and the engineering and all of the permitting associated with the project. So we understand you don't have a quorum and this isn't, and we can't make any decisions or take any, do any presentations. So we just wanted, at the last meeting, we had kind of presented an updated set of package of plans and everything where we were at on the project. We've made great progress with the planning board. We're actually discussing terms of the special permit approval decision at the planning board stage. And we were hoping that we're getting to the same final stages with your commission, and talking about, conditions of hopefully closing the hearing soon and talking about conditions of an order. So with that, we just kind of wanted, since we were here, we wanted to get your feedback to see if you had any questions, comments that we could answer or address on our package.
Okay, so were there any, I went through the documents. They're very thorough. They generally look good. I do have some questions just about some of the steeper changing grade areas and plantings, and I'll go through those. Do you have any comments that you want clarification on before we, and understanding that I don't want to talk about very much today, just because I'd rather do that when the voting members are here. I just want to kind of go through this to say these are things that I'm seeing that I want to discuss going forward.
That'd be, if you can provide that information to us,
Sure.
then we'll continue this.
Yep.
When there's a quorum, and be able to address that and other questions.
But do you have questions coming back for us? Okay, you don't, okay. So in looking at the drawings, the alternate utility connection, so the two connections that you're proposing, I meant to get you the name of a company that does remote boring. They have the ability to run pipes underground using sensors and a bore head.
Directional bore.
Directional bore. Have you considered directional bores? Are they cost prohibitive? My experience, I've only had one experience with them, and it was revolving around a parking lot.
So we'll address it next time.
Okay, next time. Okay, right. Snow plowing storage / removal strategy. I know that we talked about that, and I think your response was removal, but I'd like to verify that. On infiltration basin 3, you labeled something impervious fill material, and I just want to get into exactly what that is, and the ability, whether or not that affects the ability to plant over the top of it. Individual house lots. So this, what we're talking about is the master plan and the roadway approval. Individual houses going forward will need to be resubmitted individually as they go. So we're not actually reviewing the house lots, other than the master planning strategy concerning the basins and the grading.
So if I can just clarify,
Yep.
so all of the houses are more than 100 feet from the wetlands. There's one house that's about 90 feet away.
Okay.
And we're asking for the approval for that one house.
I don't think that's accurate,
No?
Nick. I think there's the 3 houses on the left as we come in are in the buffer zone.
I agree, it's not all of the houses. We're not talking about needing it's only the ones that are actually within the jurisdiction are the ones that we're talking about.
So the commission would rather see us file individually on those lots going
Yes.
forward?
Yeah, just because I don't want to slow you down on this. I don't want to force you to have that level of discussion at this time, if you're comfortable submitting on those when those lots are ready to be filled in.
Would the understanding be that if we were consistent with the plans that we've had shown you so far,
Yep.
that there would be
Yes.
possibly an order of conditions coming for that? If,
Well, we would need to see it. And
Yeah.
The big piece that's on that we haven't talked about is retaining as many of the existing trees as possible. You've shown caliber trees that are in the 2.5-inch kind of and a specific height. Our hope is that you retain as much of the large caliper trees that are not conflicting with parking, driveways and houses, so that as much of the character of the existing site can be retained. I know that there are significant areas that you're changing the grade. All the trees are going to have to come down, or you're going to plant in areas where you're not doing that, and we're pretty close to the existing grade. We would ask that you consider the local trees that are currently in place rather than doing planting. And there are some planting, in the previous discussions, there were, let me see this, notable conditions of the site, stands of American chestnut, stone walls, outcroppings of lady slippers, black oak tree, and mature specimen tree, and I actually don't off the top of my head know what that pertains to. But those conditions that are on site, we're trying to maintain and minimize the impact on them. And
Not American chestnut, but otherwise true.
stands, it says, it's not American chestnut?
That's a mistake.
No, it's a
Yeah.
mistake, okay. So just to keep going, all right?
Yep.
Or do you,
No, we would just be a little concerned that going through the process for the subdivision and not having the lots is,
no, it's
something-
not, our discussion isn't revolving around the lots or the division or anything like that. It's really revolving, at that point, it's revolving around the plantings and trying to maintain as much of the character of what we have now, of the site as it is now.
is that okay?
And the reason for that is, I mean, we could put that in the discussion now, but it would require you to have the lots to a higher level of detail than I believe that you currently do.
And I think it's only 4 houses we're talking about
Yeah, we're
that I
not
counted.
talking about a large
Yeah,
number of
there's only
property.
4.
Right.
Okay, we'll have to,
Within
we'll have to
our-
look at that. I mean, it's just, I'm just looking a little perplexed because the write-up in the notice of intent that we submitted was what we had believed to
Yep.
be the roads, the infrastructure, the grading, and the homes associated with the whole project,
Well, we-
not just the streets and the ways, but,
Which, the document,
so this is
we've-
just new information, that's all.
okay, so we haven't gotten into this, you haven't presented the individual lot plans, or the planning plans for the individual lots, or the final house lot, of the final kind of
Right.
development of the individual lots. And I'm fine with that, with the understanding that that's going to be submitted at a later date, and understanding that the lots and the grading and as they are currently being proposed in this scheme are going to carry forward. And that our assumption is that that's going to carry forward, and it should be relatively straightforward, because all of that's being approved at this time.
Yeah, I guess we just didn't, since it's the first time we're talking about it, we didn't know that there would be, planting plans associated with our homes, because I think what we tried to capture on the plans was a big box and grading that encompassed, that if it were approved, we would live within those limits.
Understanding that our primary concern with the discussion that we see happening at a later date revolves around trying to maximize the retainage of the existing trees and elements that define the character of the property as it is now.
Okay.
And we just haven't gotten to that level. Honestly, we haven't gotten to that level of discussion in any of the discussions that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm assuming that you would prefer to proceed and get approval, kind of proceed with the plan as it is now and follow up with that at a later date, so as not to slow it down. But that's your
So
call.
I think we'll have to just, we'll discuss.
Okay.
Because as Mike said, I mean, we're here for the subdivision, so if we don't get full approvals on all 23 lots, then we haven't completed the process yet, so.
Okay.
Just a
But
matter
you
of-
understand what I'm talking about?
That's from
Okay.
Pulte's point of view.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But
I know what you're talking about.
You were talking, okay. So we're not trying to switch anything up here, we're just trying to, a level of review, and based on the information that we have, and how you want to play that forward. You can submit that information if you want, and then we'll review it and we'll include it in, or not. And I'm good either way.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. House lots, let's see. Oh, yeah, so I was very surprised by the 12-foot drop of the entry drive, the 2 6-foot walls flanking the ramp, the drive that came in. I mean, it just seems aggressive, but I understand why it's there. Maximum reuse, we're talking about stone walls, as was discussed, existing trees wherever grading allows, basins, protection of the stockpile materials to minimize washout between when they're stockpiled and when they're relocated. The changing grade along, the 22-foot changing grade with the retention basin along lots 4 and 5. I just want to talk about the planting strategy of what can be done so that so that someone driving into the property doesn't come upon that. Basically, the road swings along there, and there's the significant change in grade across the back of lots 4 and 5. Just what's the plan going forward for breaking that up or planting it or something like that, just to minimize the impact of that. The light fixtures are called out as cutoff fixtures. I just want to confirm that they're 100% cutoff fixtures. The uplight at the development sign, just a discussion about that, and whether or not there's an alternate strategy that allows, we're looking for minimum kind of bright sky impact.
Michael, explain what cutoff lights are, again, for the
Cutoff
public.
light is when the light fixture doesn't throw any light vertically to the sky. So if you have a light bulb that's hanging, any light that's coming off the top of the bulb going up, that's basically contributing to bright sky. You want light fixtures that basically direct all of the light in a downward fashion. It minimizes, it kind of more control of the light.
We'll have to look into that because the lights we're proposing were specifically given to us by the town.
It says that they satisfy, they labels them as cutoff fixtures based on a certain standard. I don't know that standard. I just want to talk about the light fixtures to make sure that the level of cutoff is, preferably they're 100% cutoff because it minimizes the impact to the surrounding areas. Granite discuss. There's a detail in there for granite monument details, granite monuments for laying out the road.
Yes.
I couldn't find where those were proposed to be located, and I just wanted to confirm that those are outside jurisdiction or outside of an impact area.
I can show you where they are on the plans. I can highlight them for
Okay.
you.
But they're all outside impact areas, and
They are basically 25 feet off the center line of the road.
I just, the concern was that, just to make sure that they're outside of impact areas. And if they are, then we can talk about that later, but, just wetland impact, then lots of trees, grading, and just it's not really our jurisdiction, but making sure that there's no conflict between what's being proposed at the entry and line of sight for drivers leaving the property. Just because Unquity Road is a fast road, and that's everything that I had to discuss. Did you have items that you?
Well, no, where it's not a full hearing, I think that's sufficient for giving an understanding of the status at this point and what concerns we still have.
So I don't see anything that I just mentioned as requiring additional information. It's really, these are just talking points of things to go through.
We'll talk about it. We may need to give you some additional detail on some of those lots.
Sure.
But just so clarification, so when we file the NOI, we specifically filed it for like the infrastructure, roadway detention, and then 23 lots.
Sure.
So I think that's what we're looking for approval from the commission. Sure. And I think we'll highlight those lots. I know they're called out in the NOI and the plans. We'll illustrate those more clearly when we come next time and talk about that planting plan.
Yeah, so it's really about trying to retain as much of the
Understood.
existing trees as possible. So if you want to submit that, and you can, then it's really survey the trees, compare those to where the changing grade isn't being impacted to try to maximize the retainage of that. And then also the items that were previously listed in terms of characteristics of the site, the stone walls, the outcrop, the lady slippers, the oak tree, the mature specimen trees. Just trying to maximize retainage of all of those kinds of things.
Okay.
So, are you all, Judith, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm fine.
Abutters or members of the public that might have questions or comments? No? Okay, so we'll defer this until next month?
Yes. When was that? January 17th?
17th, yes.
Kathy, can we maintain our place in the agenda?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And I'm sorry about tonight.
No,
Just, yeah, thank
We
you very
get
much.
it. Volunteer boards.
Yep.
Take care.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, Mike, the American chestnuts, but, you know, they basically are extinct except for some little sticks coming out of the ground from old dead trees.
They qualify, right? Sticks qualify.
Well, almost. I wish,
There are some 8-inch chestnuts on that site, dead, snags.
dead, yeah, with
8-inch
little
snags.
stems coming out.
There's some stems coming off.
Yeah.
Lots, more chestnuts than you see in most cases up in the Blue Hills.
Oh, okay, then I stand corrected, that matters. Then
I
that
was
does matter.
surprised
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was out there. I did some peer review on that.
Yep.
yeah, this is
Sorry,
Steve
Steve
Ivers
Ivers?
speaking.
Yes.
Well, that's worthwhile checking out again then.
I would think so.
Yeah, thanks, thank you.
All right, that was number 1. Next on the agenda is number 5, abbreviated notice of intent, 593 Blue Hill Avenue. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Bob Hannigan, representing Eastern Luxury Homes, for an abbreviated notice of intent.
Why is it abbreviated?
I just thought that that was a better method to do. We had filed, actually, it may be better to deal with number 6 first. That was the ANRAD that we had,
Yeah, all right, that probably makes sense.
yeah.
And so the public knows, these are adjoining properties, and the second, number 6, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation at 591 Blue Hill Avenue. That's actually the resource area that will actually impact this particular proposed home at 593. So you're right, why don't we do 6 first? That's at 591 Blue Hill Avenue. And what can you tell us about that?
We had a site visit on Saturday. Arthur and Ingrid were there, and Nicole Hayes from Goddard Consulting. And I'm not sure if Arthur spoke to you about that.
He did get a full report from him. He said that it seemed to be pretty, he indicated that there's not a lot of spongy soil there, but the flags seem to be in the appropriate place. And he said that both he and Ingrid were satisfied with the flag locations. And that was done by Nicole?
Nicole Hayes from Goddard Consulting, Scott Goddard's firm.
Now, the only, and I'm probably going to get ahead of myself here, because it may go back to 593, but I thought that there was a concern with the water coming down. This is Perkins Way?
Yeah,
Perkins
maybe, I
Drive?
don't know if we want to discuss that with the number 9, or number 8.
Number 8.
610 Brush Hill Road.
Well, it's the same road, but, and you're gonna have to help me on this one, because my understanding is that the culverts that perhaps need to be added to this are at the, or the catch basins. Is there a problem with the runoff there? Because my understanding is that the roadway was pretty well rutted, whatever Perkins.
Yeah, there was some discussion with Paul Sullivan as to, there's a trench drain across the paved area at the end of Perkins Lane that was built for 610 Brush Hill Road. So there was talk of increasing the size of that and doubling it, so more would be collected and directed into the level spreader that was created for when 610 Brush Hill Road was constructed, and then subsequently when the pool notice of intent was filed and the order of conditions was issued, that was extended. So
What was extended?
the level spreader, the runoff coming down Perkins Lane is collected by, there's a double graded catch basin, and then.
Right at the end of the Adams property?
Correct. Well, not at the end of the pavement.
Correct.
Approaching the Adams property.
But then doesn't the water continue to go down down the hill? Because that level spreader you'd have to come down that Perkins Lane and take a right to go
No.
along the retaining wall at the edge of the
Yeah, well,
property.
it's collected in both the double grade catch basin and the trench drain.
Right.
Now, I advised Sullivan, and he said he was gonna have it, a larger size trench drain and maybe, double barrel it instead of just having the single one there. Now, that collects runoff from Perkins Lane that's paved from Brush Hill Road, and also the double grade catch basin, which discharges into the level spreader that parallels the wall on 610.
I'm with you. I'm not sure anybody else is, but I know exactly what you're saying. But my question is, if the water's not picked up, as it comes down the paved portion of Perkins Lane from Brush Hill Road, the water's gonna some of the water's gonna go beyond that.
Yeah.
Towards Blue Hill Avenue.
Yeah, well, I mean, it always has.
Right.
Yeah, and it will continue to do so, but, I believe with the larger size trench drain across the end of the paved portion of Perkins Lane, plus it being doubled, then, that will collect more runoff that comes down Perkins Lane from Brush Hill Road. And also, too, I believe Paul said that he repaved the portion of the top portion of Perkins Lane, so there's a bit of a lip there, so.
Right, we discussed that a couple of years ago, and he
Right.
was gonna put a berm.
Right.
What I say at the bottom of the hill, but it's not literally the bottom, it's only at the essentially
the
the
pavement.
end of the paved area.
Right.
But am I correct, though, as the lane keeps going towards Blue Hill Avenue?
It does, it goes through, yes.
And it's
Yeah,
pretty rutted
It's
there.
private, sorry?
It's pretty rutted.
Yeah, it's unpaved.
Right.
It's, yeah, there's, I mean, it's passable. UPS and FedEx go up and down. I assume the post office does as well, but, and also too, Brian Haggerty, he, I believe accesses his home, which is 600 Brush Hill Road, but it's down essentially on Blue Hill Ave.
Right.
So,
But, and I wasn't there, so you're gonna have to tell me, but did you have a discussion with Arthur and Ingrid?
No.
On Saturday about
no,
putting in catch basins?
no.
Does it need a catch basin at the low point?
At the low point?
Yeah, well, is there a low point before you get to Brush Hill, to Blue Hill Avenue?
I think it's a pretty steady slope all the way down to Blue Hill Ave.
So what happens to the water right now? What happens to the water that hits Blue Hill Avenue? Does it just go on to Blue Hill Avenue?
I'll have to check, but I believe that there's a catch basin. There is a little bit of drainage system in Blue Hill Ave, so I'm not 100% certain where it is, but in looking at the job, I did notice that there was some drainage in Blue Hill Ave.
Well, you're on, I know I'm bouncing, so now I'm going back to 593, but that's
Yes.
Lot 2.
Correct.
Correct?
That was recently subdivided, yeah. Originally, it was, the whole 64,000 square feet was 591 when we filed the ANRAD. And then subsequently, it was divided into two lots. There was a Form A done. So Lot 1 is the front lot, 591, and the notice of intent for 593 is Lot 2, which is the back lot. Both of those are accessed off of Blue Hill Ave, private driveway from Blue Hill Ave, an existing curb cut, and really the only one that's any activity.
Isn't that the same as what I would call the continuation of Perkins Lane?
Perkins Lane won't be, we can't access the two homes off of Perkins Lane.
So there's a dedicated driveway on the property.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
But does Perkins Lane continue all the way to Blue Hill Avenue?
it does. It goes from Brush Hill Road to Blue Hill Ave.
Blue Hill Ave. And what's being done to that? Anything?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing, aside from what Paul Sullivan had discussed with the Haggertys about increasing the trench drain where it currently exists.
And how do you keep the water discharge going down Perkins Lane from going left to the two new homes?
Well, there is a berm there. It's a noticeable berm. I'm not sure if Arthur or Ingrid mentioned that. It's pretty distinct between Perkins Lane and these two lots. So there'll be no actually, one of the points I was going to make with this abbreviated notice of intent was, and that's one of the reasons why I did an abbreviated notice of intent was, essentially, there's going to be, well, there'll be an impact in the 100-foot buffer, but there'll be no impact on the wetlands because the wetlands are up gradient of this activity. And also, the 25-foot non-disturb zone essentially is the limits of Perkins Lane. So any activity will be the other side of the bit of a berm that's along the northeasterly edge of Perkins Lane in the lot between the northeasterly sideline of Perkins Lane and the activity of the lot.
And it's all down gradient?
Yes.
Okay.
But I guess my hang-up is you're talking about Paul Sullivan talking to Mr. Haggerty and doubling the size of the trench drain and making sure that the catch basin at the bottom of the paved portion of Perkins Lane, that all that water is being diverted into the wetlands through the level spreader.
Well, no, I mean, you're not going to catch all of it. The idea of the trench drain, the double catch basin was to intercept any increase in the runoff that was caused by paving an additional portion of Perkins Lane for the 610 Brush Hill Road, Adams property. So, I mean, you're never gonna collect it all, and that was never the intent of those drainage structures.
Why is that relevant to this project?
Because it's the same road.
Yeah, it's the same road, but it's not the same property. It's not relevant to this property. How is that discussion relevant to this property?
Because I still want to know, as I understand it from talking to Arthur, and my memory of having been there a number of times, is that the unpaved portion of Perkins Lane that goes all the way down is pretty rutted, and it appears to be as a result of the water. And I don't know if you're building off to the side, it's the same road. I know a portion of that's going to be a dedicated driveway.
No,
But
No, none of that is a dedicated.
There will be no access from Perkins Lane.
It's all
Period, the
off
end.
of Blue Hills Ave. A
Right, but
dedicated driveway.
Understood.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm inarticulate in how I'm describing it, but that Perkins Lane is like one arm, and the other arm is a dedicated driveway.
Yep.
They're right next to each other.
Right, right, and
I know, sir, I'm Alex, from Eastern Luxury.
is the applicant.
You have to come forward and speak into the mic, okay? Thanks.
But you're having conversations about Perkins Lane, which is outside of the control of the applicant. So I don't understand how Perkins Lane is relevant to this piece of property.
The same way that the wetlands are across the street,
Yep.
and water is being diverted into that, and I don't know whether or not there's any impact in building a house on Lot 2, which is 593.
But
is
it's all
Lot 2.
downhill. It's all down gradient of the wetland. It's all down gradient of Perkins Lane. So nothing that we do on this property is gonna affect,
Oh, no, it's,
it's all down gradient of, so this is Perkins Lane.
Yep.
This is all down gradient of the wetland. Nothing that we do here is gonna have a direct effect on Perkins Lane or that. And they don't own Perkins Lane, so we can't ask them to make
no, I understand that.
modifications to
But what I'm looking for is whether or not this water, this down gradient, right?
Yep.
So the water's gonna go down.
Yep.
So the water's coming this way.
Yep.
So what are they doing to control the water coming this way into, I mean, they're in the entire home here is in the buffer zone.
Yes.
And you've got water flowing towards the home.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, how do you stop that?
Okay, the water management strategy for the site,
Yeah.
for stuff that's coming off the edge.
Correct. That's what I'm asking about.
Okay.
Yeah, did you follow that? I know I'm looking
Yeah,
at
no,
this and you're not.
you
but-
know, what we need to do is we need to file with the DPW a stormwater management plan, recharge the roof drains, capture any increased runoff from the paved driveway and recharge that. But, again, that's, as Michael said, it's, down gradient of any wetlands. So there'd be no impact on the wetlands, there'd be no impact on the 25-foot non-disturb zone. And, yeah.
The berm that you're talking about along the edge of Perkins Lane is off of your property.
Exactly.
It is not even on your property? No. So there's, you can't modify that, the berm, in doing the
Yeah,
the
well,
project?
there's a portion of it's probably on the property.
property
but
line
it-
right there.
It won't be modified.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
but the
very,
berm- but
very
there- I
wide
don't-
line of vegetation there.
Is the berm is off the property?
No, the berm is a portion on Perkins Lane and a portion on the property, but that will not be altered. As Alex said, there's vegetation there that will remain along
Pretty
that
wide
berm.
line of vegetation, trees, bushes that will stay there forever.
All right, well, one thing, we don't have a landscaping plan as part of this, and that's why I asked about why is it an abbreviated notice of intent? We definitely need a landscaping
Well,
plan.
you know, I mean, it's,
So
as I
why-
said before, it's an abbreviated notice of intent because in my opinion, everything was down gradient of the wetlands. I mean, realistically, you know, if Alex had hired Bob the surveyor from Burlington, you know, he wouldn't have been aware of the wetlands on 610, on the Adams property, and, you know, they wouldn't have filed probably. You know, so.
We're
I mean,
aware of that one.
No, and I'm aware of it, and that's why.
We had a
and
site
that's
walk
why
on the
we're
same
before
day,
you.
Bob,
And that's why I'm before you.
We
And-
wouldn't have missed
and-
that one.
And it's abbreviated notice of intent because I feel that there's little impact, as Michael had said. Everything's down gradient, and, you know, there's a berm between Perkins Lane and any activity on the proposed lot.
But that's exactly what I've been talking about from the beginning. The water's coming from Brush Hill Road, right down here. That's the Adams house right there, but that's the wetland. What I call the retaining wall, the pool is back where the end of my finger is.
Right. Yep. I know.
Yeah,
The
I
pool's
know.
back here.
Yeah.
So the water's coming down this way, and then it's flowing, it's gonna sheet flow this way, and towards Blue Hill Avenue, but it's gonna sheet flow this way.
Both, yeah.
So if they put a berm here, or if they change.
There is a berm, yep.
If they, I don't know what's going on there. That's why, exactly why I'm asking, because I wanna know, what mechanism do you have to stop is there a mechanism to stop the water from flowing towards the house? And is it therefore going to increase the amount of water flowing onto Blue Hill Avenue? And I don't see, and I don't know whether or not there are any catch basins at the bottom of Blue Hill Avenue. That's what I don't know.
No, we're gonna have to, recharge on the lot for both lots 1 and 2. It's on a state highway, so we can't increase any runoff from the property onto the state highway. So,
That's my point. That's what I've been talking about.
right, but that's beyond the jurisdiction of the 100-foot buffer, and, yeah.
Oh, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. But listen,
On
this
lot one
this
it is,
your
but
map.
on lot two it's not.
This is your map.
Right, no,
It's absolutely within our jurisdiction.
yeah, well,
Isn't it? Look at the property line right there, going along Perkins. You're within, this is your 100-foot mark.
I'm saying what recharge that's gonna be done before we get onto Blue Hill Ave is beyond the 100-foot buffer. There will be some recharge
Talking about
of the roof runoff. Actually, Blue Hill Ave is down here, so before anything gets to Blue Hill Ave, we can't increase the runoff at all onto the State Highway, Blue Hill Ave. So there will be recharge of the roof runoff on this property, and then the same here, and also some recharge of the paved driveway before it gets onto Blue Hill Ave, which is beyond the 100-foot buffer to the wetlands.
But the water's coming from here. We need to know where it's going. So we need to have your recharge plans on the notice of intent.
For lot two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can show you that. Reason I didn't show it is because it's not gonna be impacting the wetlands. So that's why it doesn't show on this plan. Everything's flowing downhill. The wetlands are uphill, up gradient of the activity.
Yep, but some of the water coming from Brush Hill Road is being diverted into the wetlands. And you're talking about, with the Haggertys, doubling the size of the trench drain and then directing it into a level spreader to go into the wetlands. And you've got water, the water's getting directed in here, and you've got water going this way and sheet flowing
No, you don't,
towards the house.
water's not going that way because of the berm the existing berm between Perkins Lane and Lot 2, lots 1 and 2.
Well, I want some specs on the size of the existing berm and whether or not you plan to change that berm. I mean, the applicant is saying you're going to be planting there.
No, we're not gonna plant,
You're
we're
saying
just gonna leave as
existing.
is, because it's a very, very nice natural fence. That all that vegetation is gonna stay like that, it's around 1.5 feet, something like that, higher than the actual Perkins Lane, which is not our property. And if I would do something like that, like on the map, I have to cut everything to make them very close to each other. We don't have to do this. We have plenty of room here. We're talking about 6, 7, 10 feet of vegetation that we can completely leave alone and not touch it, not doing anything with that. That's why I can't even make a design of landscape, because it's whatever it is there, that's gonna stay like that.
Well, I want that would be part of a landscaping plan. If you're going to leave it in its natural state, that may be a landscaping plan, but we definitely need or at least I would definitely want a landscaping plan. I mean, I can't remember looking at a notice of intent without one. Do you?
No, never.
All right, we'll give you a landscaping plan, right, we'll give you more detail.
Okay.
We'll show some recharge of the roof runoff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. Why, the whole house is in the buffer zone. I don't know if there's bedrock there, but is there any reason why you can't get further out of, can put some of the house away from the resource area?
The applicant wants decent-sized rear yard, and that's the reason why it's located where it is.
Plus, there is some trees that I would like to leave. I don't wanna
Right.
cut them.
Between the McLeod property, which is northwest of that, and there's a large number of trees that Ingrid and Arthur had seen when they were out there.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could give us a plan that showed the stuff you're saving, as well as trees that are coming down within our jurisdiction. And it sounds great. I'm trying to promote saving as many of the trees as you can on site, and if you're doing that, that's gonna be good.
The house will have a lot more privacy.
Yep.
Because between Perkins Lane, there's natural fence.
Yep. No, it sounds nice. It does sound good.
Okay, I know what I'm looking for, a berm elevation as it currently exists, and some representation that it's staying the same. A landscaping plan that would include the natural state adjoining Perkins Lane, if that's what you want, and the trees saved.
Right, trees to be retained.
And
As well
then,
as trees to be removed.
right. And the roof runoff calculations, okay. Anything else?
No, that should do it. We're not trying to make this more difficult. This is just what we normally have. You know, we
Of course.
appreciate you trying to save the trees and get
Yeah,
some
for
privacy
sure.
and all that.
Thank you.
Any abutters, members of the public close by?
I have a question. I'd like to just see that map,
Sure.
because
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm Eleanor Metro, I live on 12 Vos Hill Road, and I've lived there almost all my life, and I've seen the water change many times over the years, especially the last time that house on Perkins Lane was built.
Yep.
And the water changed all around. My next-door neighbor's cellar got flooded constantly, and I think, where are you? He had to put in 2 sump pumps. So. And a French drain.
And where is that house located?
He's 18 Vos Hill.
Okay.
And then, so I'm not sure, when you're talking Lot 1, Lot 2, what numbers? 391, 5, whatever it is?
It's here, it's right here. It lives right here.
591 is here, 593 is here. That's where the activity is. That's this lot.
Okay, so this is on Blue Hill Ave, and there were gonna be 2 houses built?
Right.
Okay, now you're talking, the thing I just got said 1 house.
One house is in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission within a 100-foot buffer. of
Which
the-
is where?
Which is right here. And this one is will be outside of the jurisdiction of the
Right,
Conservation.
that one
Yeah.
wouldn't cause a problem for any of us, but anything built here, I know, is gonna flood us all out. The water, just because there was a house built up here, made such a difference.
Where are you pointing to?
Above
Up to Adams, property.
Okay.
Is that the new house? Is that their name, Adams?
Right.
Okay. Since their house was built, the water comes this way, not down Blue Hill
Toward-
Avenue,
towards
but
Vos Hill?
literally. Huh?
Towards Vos Hill?
Vos Hill,
Okay.
yeah. And I mean, when we've had real heavy rainstorms, I see the water just pouring down. Now that, not him, the guy who, Cassano, who owned this property and wrecked it and ruined it, he literally dug up all that beautiful loam and took it out, which I thought was illegal in the town of Milton to, you know, we called on him, but nobody did
I'm
anything.
sorry.
He operated a nursery.
This,
on
oh,
the
this is the nursery.
That
when
was
it
the
under
nursery
operation.
part.
Okay, all right, I
Yeah,
get it.
that's where these 2 houses are going.
Yes, correct.
What was the
Well, there's
nursery?
only one plan with a house right now.
Right, but that's
A lot 2 that you have in front
up
of you.
there.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's the one that's gonna give us the most trouble because it's up higher.
I understand that. and
Unless the
that's-
water will go and revert around, I don't know.
Well, that's why we asked for things like roof runoff, where it's going, and we want to make sure that the capacity, because the roof itself is going to be impervious, so it's going to shed all that water. It's got to go somewhere.
Right.
So Bob is going to go back and do some calculations on the roof runoff to make sure that whatever mechanism he suggests has a sufficient capacity so it doesn't go into your yard.
Well, and the other thing is that all these houses, it's all springs all around. I know my house, when my father built the house I'm in, and then when they dug for the foundation, they found springs everywhere. So we've had the French drain ever since he built it. But, and I'm assuming, I don't know, the house next door, I think he just put it in now because he bought it and, you know, redid it over. But, now I lost my train of thought. The water, also since Cassano dug up all that topsoil and did whatever he did with it, it's like clay there. I don't know, it just seemed the water just has no place to drain and just comes pouring. It literally pours down the side where my fir trees are on the side of there's like a gully now. It's unbelievable how it just comes pouring down.
Well, you're on,
I'm on Vos 12, Vos Hill
you're
Road.
12, and you said that 18 also floods?
And 18,
And 26 as well? 26 as well, and you're all flooding recently, or this is historic? This is since the house was built at Adams, the Adams property?
since that house, the water table has changed.
Has
It's
changed.
really bad now.
And then for all of them, the flooding condition has gotten worse for everybody since that change?
That's the prevailing wisdom on the street, is that once that
You
house.
Can you identify yourself?
Identify yourself, thank you.
Michael Brown, I'm at 26 Rose Hill, Alex, nice to meet you.
Sure.
So, yeah, I moved in about a year ago.
Just use the mic if you would.
And the prevailing wisdom on the street is that once that Adams house went in, things got a lot worse in terms of the drainage, and Eleanor can back me up. And so you have not only the streams coming down through everybody's backyard, going every which way, forming gullies really right down the middle of people's backyards, but now all of a sudden basements are flooding.
Yep.
And when my neighbor at 18 dug a dry well, the contractors noticed all these, springs and streams going underground. And so, just for context, the runoff problem on that hill is big and complex.
Yeah.
And just so I think we just wanted you guys to be aware of that.
There is also a lot of, used to be a big farm. And to drain water the right way, I guess, I know under Vos Hill Road, there is a pipe, a clay pipe that's massive. That pipe cracked because of the trucks going up and down in the freezing weather and anyway, it cracked. Water seeks water. I don't know how many years ago now, it's probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the day after Thanksgiving, I'm walking down my cellar to do my laundry for my Thanksgiving linens, and there is a river in my basement. Never had water. I'm saying, what the heck? I called the fire department, they came up, pumped me out, Then my husband sees, about, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks later, a geyser literally coming up from the bottom of my driveway. Like a geyser pouring up. And I'm saying, what the heck? We called the town. It's a long story, it goes on and on, but they dug up, and that wonderful Italian man who used to be what was his name? Oh, he was wonderful. He knew his business for the town.
Al Zanaboni?
I don't know, he lives had that nice brick house on Brook Road now. I can't remember his name. He was great. He came, he had his little Geiger counters, he went around, he says, oh, you got French drain, oh, you got, oh, good, 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 good. And then he says, I said to him, down there, what's that? They dug up the whole street and found that clay pipe had cracked, and they diverted it. They had to divert it, otherwise my house was gonna literally float away. And that was coming from that end. Then we got it now coming from the back end. It's like, there's a lot of.
All right, well, the only issue though for us is whether or not this is gonna change anything. We certainly don't wanna make it
I guarantee you
worse.
it's gonna change, because all that land is now, everything that's being absorbed.
But, right, that's one of the things. It may be in the applicant's best interest too to put some loam back, because it'll be nicer to landscape, I
Right, it's
presume.
pretty much barren now, and it will be vegetated, there'll be lawns, there'll be,
Yeah.
Try to collect all the water that's coming out of the roof, and that's a lot of square footage. So I would say that's gonna be less water.
I hope, but I
But
don't
it
know.
has to go somewhere, and Bob, this goes back to an issue that Craig McNaught, during his tenure, a couple of tenures here, was adamant about, and that is that we need, on some of these roof runoff systems, we need to know what the perk is. And he actually wanted to change the regulations to have a perk test for all of this. Because up on Park Drive, we ran into a roof runoff situation, and it was, as Eleanor said, it was pure clay. Nothing perked. So it may be that you need some kind of a Caltech chamber or something to drop into the ground.
well, as I pointed out before, if you do a perk test, soil observation, and there's clay there now, it's not gonna perk. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, if you put in a Caltech system with crushed stone and the like, it'll create a volume storage there. But, it'll perk, but it won't perk as fast as, say, something in Plymouth. I'd also like to point out to the commission.
Right, but I'm with you. I think
Right,
we're all
right,
with you on
right.
that.
And that's what is required by the town to recharge the roof runoff. So that's what we will do. Before we get too far, I'd like to point out to the members of the commission too, Hume Lane, which is shown on the Form A plan, that accompanied the abbreviated notice of intent, that shows the two lots. It's March 8th. I don't know if you have it there. It was in your
Is
packet.
that one?
No, this is November.
Hume Lane is similar to Perkins Lane, and that's paved. There's 5 or 6 homes on that, so, there's runoff that contributes to the,
This is on November.
Is that off of,
it's off of
Brush Hill?
Road.
It's right here, John.
Ah,
See,
okay,
here's
I got it,
Perkins,
got it.
this is you.
Thank you.
But see, also, with the Adams house, when the swimming pool went in there, remember Craig tried to perk around there, and it was only clay. It was in really bad shape, and that was a continuation of the same issue. So that probably exacerbated this condition of the water.
Yeah.
I'm saying there was the Adams house that went in, and then 5 years later, they put in the swimming pool. And that's when we became aware of the fact that the ground was not absorbing water, it didn't perk. And we put in specific requirements to keep the water flowing, we thought, in this direction,
Right,
away
into the
from
wetland.
Perkins.
Into the
Yeah,
wetland.
yeah.
Well, right, as you come down the section of, this is the Lisa Adams property right here. So when you get to this corner here, That's where we asked Paul Sullivan to build up a berm
Right.
here. And there's a catch basin right there. And the catch basin was capturing the water and pushing it over here into the wetlands.
Into the wetlands.
Which is what was delineated on Saturday, or the approval, they're recommending that we approve it. At least Arthur was. So some of this water is going this way. And that was the idea. But what we're hearing from the
Doesn't sound
neighbors,
like
there's
it.
still a lot of water
Yeah,
going
yeah.
towards Vos Hill Road.
Yeah. Did it get worse about 4 years ago? Do you remember? Or has it always been about the same for the last 15 or 20 years? Did it get worse?
Oh, it's gotten worse over the years, yeah. And it's basically gotten worse since that house was built on Perkins Lane. I mean, it really changed, whatever it changed, we just saw it it was just getting, and, I mean, I'm fine, I don't have water in my cellar now because that pipe was diverted. And it'll probably, who knows, crack again and start seeking, because the water was coming from below, coming
Yeah,
up.
that's what it does.
Problem is that if there are streams and springs and all of that under this,
Yeah, we can't
wherever
control
you, we can't control that.
We can't.
But wherever you put a new building, you put a foundations for a house, you don't know how that's gonna affect any of that. If there's nothing flowing under that, then maybe there's no effect. But if there's a major,
Underground stream?
underground stream,
Yeah.
and you put a house there with a foundation, you've just blocked it and you're redirecting it in all different directions. And that's probably what happened up at the Adams house, is that there was a major path under that house, they put the foundations in, and it just looked for the next path around, and it found
Diverted it,
It
yeah.
diverted it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it all ends up going downhill, so it's a matter of time before it travels this way. Stripping all the loam off of the clay exacerbates it.
exacerbates it.
Yeah,
Exacerbates
sure,
that problem.
yeah.
But that's why, maybe in the landscape plan, you can, I don't know what it looks like right now, but you
It's
said it was
pretty much barren, aside from the, as Alex mentioned, in the back of the property up near 608, Brush Hill Road, which is off of Humes Lane.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trees.
I don't know.
It was a nursery. It was, they.
Right, but
Yeah.
but some loam would be an assist, I think, generally speaking. That's probably to your benefit.
He plowed it all away.
Right, no, I understand that. I think that the applicant, the next homeowner, is gonna wanna have enough topsoil to, generate a nice lawn and bushes and
Right.
whatever. Sure, but could you come forward and identify yourself? Thanks.
My name is Mo Swelmy from 18
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Mo Swelmy from 18 Vos Hill. And so our concern especially with, probably lot number 1 won't be an issue because it's already closer to the Blue Hill Avenue. But for lot number 2, it's not only it's sloped downward, but also it's towards Vos Hill
Right,
Road.
right.
And it's an issue for 18 Vos Hill and also for 26, and I think also for Eleanor
Yes.
on 12. So the lot is already down and then left,
Yeah. Yes.
towards Vos Hill. And it's, I know there's natural springs and also the clay soil is not helping, but also the fact of having it slope towards
Right.
Vos Hill, we have just a tremendous amount of water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our concern with, the lot number 2.
So we agree that the flow of water and the berm along Perkins Lane on the top of, so along the top edge of lot number 2, Perkins Lane, and they're talking about retaining the berm that's there, which is gonna keep water that's flowing across the ground, the surface of the ground, from coming down the site, basically redirecting it down towards Blue Hill Ave. Our concern is really the water is minimizing the opportunity of that to get across the property and therefore further downhill, but also controlling the water that's on the property, both in terms of impervious area, driveways and roofs, that can be reabsorbed. But also, if the site is all clay, they're talking about improving that by installing lawns, basically loam and lawns, and that has absorptive capacity. and that should improve it. But what we're asking them for is a landscaping plan that shows us what they're proposing to do, and that we can have those conversations on. Understanding that there are subsurface conditions that are also going on. We're talking about springs and streams and other conditions that are underground. We don't have any way of evaluating those conditions, and that's the concern. That's part of the concern. So we can deal with the things that are above grade, but the things that are subsurface, I don't know that we have any way of, I don't know that there is any way of evaluating subsurface flows to be able to determine the impact of installing a foundation.
Because some of the water not only like goes down the, from Brush Hill, doesn't, goes like, Perkins Lane, but some of it also goes
Oh, sure,
on the
straight
other
down the
way.
pitch.
And also like, on lot number 2, it's literally like, for example, with our fence, it's literally like, at least 3 feet higher than our fence. Like, you can see our yard. So like, it's kind of like pretty high from the other side of the fence. So that would, literally like if I open my garage, like, when there's a lot of rain, it's a river, like just goes through my garage, like, so.
That's now.
That's now.
Yes.
So what they're proposing to do is to landscape the property.
Okay.
And part of that is going to improve the situation, and part of what we're trying to evaluate is what do they need to do to improve the situation to the point that it becomes tenable for the property and minimize the amount of water that's flowing across the property. At this point, we're looking for more information, and the big piece of that is the landscaping plan in terms of what they're proposing to do.
Okay.
Can I also add one other? When this Casano fellow was out there plowing all the loam away and everything, what he did was if you look at our fence line, on my side, my ground is level up against this was Tony Brando's old fence. My ground is level, his ground is level. But when you look on the other side, he has built a big mound up, so it's like maybe that much higher. And up against the fence. It was almost like he was pushing all the dirt up because he knew maybe there was going to be a problem, I don't know. But all along, he plowed everything up toward the fence line, on the other side as well. So, I don't know what that means, if it means anything, but.
Sounds like it would help you. He's upgrading it of you?
You would think it would help, but maybe where it's coming now from, maybe it's helping my backyard. But on the side of my yard, it literally is a river, a gully now. You can see the gully where my fir trees are. Between my grass and the where the trees are, it's like a gully, which is great. I love it because it's not coming into my house.
That's good.
But it's the idea that it's gotten worse and worse and worse over the years.
Well, I just, apropos of what Mike just said, we're trying to make it better. And I think there is a mechanism to do that.
Yeah, and somebody mentioned something about taking down trees. Well, all the trees that are along his yard and my yard in the back, those are weeds that just grew over all the years. They're not real trees. Did you notice those?
We're trying to save the good stuff.
Big trees, like, 5-6 inch trees.
Those were weeds. Those were never trees planted there. They're just weeds that have grown over the years because they never, ever took care of the property.
I think you may have an applicant now that is interested in taking care of the property.
I hope so.
I think anything we do, that will have to improve the neighbor situation. Even if we have to do that, I don't know, I have to discuss this with Robert, but anything that we do, it's gonna be at least 3,000-4,000 square feet less of the rain area spreading to the neighbors' backyards.
I would actually love to see 2 houses go in there and have nice landscaping compared to what's there now. The only thing I'll miss are the deer and the red fox.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments?
Are you all set? You good?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so I've got berm elevation detail, existing
Yep, I wrote them down, yes.
planned. Number 2, landscaping plan, including trees saved and trees removed. Number 3, roof runoff calculations. Anything else?
No, but Want to see these before we go forward.
Yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
make it a condition. I want to,
Right.
see this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so we're talking about January 17th?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, fine.
You're sent? All right, good, thanks. You good to go?
Well, no,
Well,
that's one of.
No, that's
yeah,
one of them.
that's the abbreviated notice of intent, which would be continued, but the
Well-
initial one is the NRAD for the line. Did you have any input from, I think you did say from Arthur and Ingrid that,
Yes, I did not talk to Ingrid, I did talk to Arthur, and because we didn't have a quorum, it wasn't an official public meeting. But
Right.
they were a subcommittee and they reported back, that is, Arthur reported back for the two of them. He said he was comfortable with the flags that were there. He was, he felt there was an appropriate delineation. And we have, I don't know if you have any other thoughts or questions that we could give. And Arthur's, by the way, said that he's available by telephone if we have a particular question. But he seemed to be comfortable and confident that the lines were properly designated. Anything else?
No.
All right, so with respect to 593 Lot 2, which is number 5 on our agenda, that's continued until, what's that?
6 is continued.
6 is continued. 5 was abbreviated.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 5 is continued.
Fine.
Yeah,
The
593.
NRAD is 6.
593.
5 is, that's Lot 2,
593 is
593.
Lot 2.
Right,
Right.
right.
So, excuse me, sorry. So the question is the ANRAD, which is 591, which is the one we heard last month, which we just discussed just momentarily.
Yes. Now, the only question, and it doesn't really affect the delineation, which is all you're looking for. It does affect, all the discussion about doubling the size of the French drain. That's a different issue.
No,
I understand that. but I just-
What the ANRAD is the ANRAD is to show the line that was delineated by Goddard Consulting and how it impacts the 591,
The
the
jurisdiction, right,
64,000 square feet, yeah. So,
Well, no, I'm good with that. I'm just putting that aside for the moment, because we heard talk tonight about doubling the size of a French drain.
perhaps we can, discuss that for number 8 after you do number 7, because that's the continued hearing for 610 Brush Hill Road.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering whether or not, when we get to that, are we changing the wetlands? I'm not suggesting anything but jurisdiction, because if Arthur's comfortable, then I'm comfortable.
Well, you're worried about not loading it, not feeding it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have some kind of a super load that we're putting into the wetlands.
Oh,
I don't know.
surcharging it, you mean?
Yes.
You're not worried about underloading it, you're worried about overloading it.
Right. And you're right, Bob, it's related, but it may be better discussed on
Well,
a 610.
it's being collected and it's being put into the level spreader and then into the wetlands. So, makes sense to me that, you're adding an additional runoff or same amount of runoff, containing the runoff in the wetlands.
That's the idea.
Right.
Well, I just remember that when we were talking about the pool, the Haggardys, which are downhill from the Adams, right, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
They had an issue with flooding of
Right,
their
putting more
property
water
as
in the
well.
top end,
Right.
it's gonna come out
We're
the
just,
bottom.
we're coming, feeding more water in the top, we're pumping it out the bottom.
Correct.
Right. I mean, we should talk to them about whether or not their situation has changed as well. Because I remember they were talking about having a river across their driveway, which just basically cuts right up, cuts parallel to the wetland.
Yeah, I agree.
And-
Well, that may be more, as Bob has indicated. I think
Item 8.
That's a 610 issue.
Okay.
But with respect to the delineation, Arthur was comfortable.
Okay.
All right? I'm
I'm
comfortable relying
comfortable
upon
with-
his
yeah.
assessment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Kathy, you were there, Ingrid was there. And is that a fair statement that people were comfortable with the
Yes.
lines as delineated?
Correct.
Okay. So are there any comments or questions from abutters or members of the public, concerned citizens? All right, so do you have a motion to approve the line as delineated?
I hate to do this, but just to jump back to Lot 2. We are seeing you again next month. I'm not convinced there isn't a way to push the house back out of the wetland, turn the house in some way. I think that could be looked at. You know, the particular design of the footprint of that house, there's a lot you could do with that. Still having a backyard, I appreciate the importance of a backyard. You could have a wonderful backyard over here, away from the wetland. You could definitely move that house. You could push it a bit.
My bigger concern with the property is the control of the water flow.
But putting the house in the wetland exacerbates the situation. That's why we tend to, it's a wet foot to begin with. You're pushing it into
Well,
a
it's
bed,
it's
you
all
know.
down
It is the
gradient.
buffer.
Yeah,
but
but
it's
the
all-
buffer still has,
Oh, I agree.
you know.
No, it has
Yeah.
an impact, but
It
it's
does.
all down gradient. So the fact that the house is actually in the 100-foot buffer zone, to me, is less significant, because it's all down gradient of the wetland. And to me, the larger issue here is the water management strategy. I have no issue with the house where it is.
But don't you think that since we don't know about underground streams, that's an unknown, that it could be exacerbating the pressure on those streams or moving somehow that water? There's a likelihood because it's in the wetland
It's in the
border.
buffer.
It's in the buffer, but it's in the buffer, but still,
Yeah,
it's
but-
wetter than that section.
The problem is we don't know what the underground conditions are happening, so
True.
we don't know if the current location is a better or a worse location from any other location. So,
But I think on a whole,
what-
our
what-
preference is to get houses out of,
Yeah, as far away as you can.
Yeah.
How about this? Why don't you, you're doing the calculations for the roof runoff and the driveway runoff. And it may be that you need, more space than you need. There may be some, as we look at the map, the water's gotta go somewhere. Whether it's a cul-de-sac or whether or not you've got a spreader of some type, or just some kind of a catch basin. Yeah, as you consider how much land do you need, where you're gonna put the water, where is it gonna go? I mean, you might be able to consider whether or not the house could move as part of that calculation. 'Cause I agree with what you said.
We'll look at it, I'll speak with Alex about it, but I think Michael is spot on with the...
And I'm agreeing with him.
Right, yeah.
I'm agreeing with him,
Good.
but we might be
We'll
able
add
to
that to the
accommodate
list. We'll add that to the
Judith's
list.
concern, and my concern too, that it doesn't have to be there, it could be over here.
yeah, and maybe you rotate it. Maybe you just, rather than it being parallel to Perkins Lane, you rotated it so that it's perpendicular to the slope. Maybe that actually improves, minimizes the impact to the underground flow. I don't know.
We'll look
I'm
at
kind
it.
of- Yeah.
Yeah, I have it for you on the 17th.
Okay, that sounds good.
Can I keep this? Do you mind? Or is that your
Sure.
only copy?
Yeah, actually, it's in the packet, but you can have
in
it.
the
yeah.
packet, yeah.
It is in the packet? Oh, okay, here.
And so is that. That's mine.
Thank you.
That's, yes, okay. Very good, thanks. So,
Thank you.
but did we have a vote?
No.
We didn't have a vote.
Well, I wasn't on the sidewalk, so I feel awkward.
No, but we take information. It wasn't a public meeting that you missed. It wasn't a
Right.
public meeting. It's just
Right.
like sending out Kathy to take a look at something or asking Kathy to go out and take a look at something and report back to us.
Right.
Excuse me. Thank
They
you.
simply reported back to us.
Okay.
Something going around.
So
Okay.
we
So
can.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, further discussion? No? All in favor? All right. That's your hand up. All right,
It's
thank
over.
you.
I think that's the least of their worries.
This, number 7 on the agenda is abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 1672, 1702, 1710, 1726 Canton Avenue. And before we begin, I should tell the public that under Chapter 44, Section 53G, we had asked the applicant to pay for a consultant for the Conservation Commission, and they agreed to that. And we took in 3 proposals and selected Steve Ivis of Ivis Environmental to do an assessment. He's here, so he can explain what actually happened and what he did. But that's just sort of background, because we wanted to get as much information as possible. At our last meeting, we had a number of outstanding questions, and I think both the applicant and the applicant's experts, as well as Steve Ivis, our consultant, can address those concerns.
John, just so people know, it's the Carberry Estate, the Walcott Estate that we're talking about. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brad Holmes with Environmental Consulting and Restoration, along with Deb Keller from Merrill Corporation. Very quickly, you're exactly correct. At the last meeting, we discussed the ANRAD application. The ANRAD application has been filed for the confirmation of the inland banks of an intermittent stream and 2 small sections of bordering vegetated wetlands that are along that intermittent stream. There was also a discussion about the drainage culvert on the neighboring property to the east, I guess it is. There was I don't know, we probably discussed the ANRAD for maybe 45 minutes or so, close to an hour. At the last and then it was decided that we would send it out for peer review, which is done. Mr. Ivas can describe his findings, but we did get his report at the end of last week. We've been able to review it. We're in agreement with his findings, which support our findings in our ANRAD.
Yeah.
And I think that's all that needs to be said on my behalf. So I'll certainly turn it over to Steve if you have any questions for that.
Steve, will you join us and identify yourself and tell us what you did? Sure. What you found? And let me just add one aspect. The only curveball here is that I'm looking at the DEP website regarding notices of intent. And I'd ask the question to all 3 of you. And that is, I think it's published today. I think that's when we got it, the 13th. DEP still has it under review, because they have a comment section on.
Yes,
take a look
of
at it.
course.
And it's still under review, and I didn't know, Steve, let me ask you first, but you can answer as well.
Certainly.
Should we be waiting for their review and their comments, or is it unnecessary?
Not necessarily. I was in Boston, for example, about 2 weeks ago, and we hadn't even gotten a number during the hearing. So the hearing was closed pending the issuance of a file number and a DEP review on a multi-story building in Boston I was working on. And at least the Boston Concom, I know you're not the Boston Concom, but they accepted that approach for that one filing. I have noticed.
State pending, it was.
Pending, they would not issue the order until they had a DEP review and a file number. That's all. They would.
We've got a file number,
Yeah,
right?
yes, we do.
But you don't have any DEP comments?
No.
They don't even say no comment.
No.
It says under review.
It's under review.
I would
So-
clarify, too, that the previous ANRAD that you just approved has the same comment as well.
Yeah.
Has a file number, but says under review.
And let me tell you that
Right, yeah.
for the past few months, all my DEP projects have had the same issue, under review for lengthy periods of time, and I'll leave it at that.
One piece I can add to that is that the
Yeah.
important part is that they did issue the file number.
Which means the form is correct. The information is there.
And on an ANRAD application, DEP doesn't offer comments. It would be something where
That's
the
right.
DEP would review a notice of intent and see that, hey, you didn't meet a performance standard on some sort of resource area
Exactly.
activity. They don't comment typically on an ANRAD application.
That's why I expected a no comment.
Right.
I would as well. But as long as we have the DEP file number, I'm confident that that's all that you would need to close.
And I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, I didn't mean to.
Oh, sure.
Divert you from your.
Well, we had 4 major issues, and I'll just go through them one at a time, if you don't mind. The first is the location of the flags on the inland bank on the stream, not going to the perennial or intermittency of the stream yet. I looked at all the flags, both sides of the stream, and all the flags, both sides of the stream, and I'll say that every single one of them were appropriate, in my opinion. Okay? The second thing is the location of the wetland delineation flags. There were 2 areas of wetlands. One was a little bit higher than the stream.
Steve can hold.
Yep.
There's an A series about, I would say, 3/4, maybe 6/10 of the way up the hill, that small A series flags. And then there was a B series of flags just in front of the dam, the breach dam. Both of those flag locations, all the flag locations there were also appropriate and properly positioned, in my opinion. Okay, so those two were just fine. With,
Can I hold you right there?
Yes.
Whether you call it the pond created by the dam, or I've heard it referred to as the farmer's pond.
Sure, we call it let's call it the former pond. I think that's maybe a more appropriate. And the intermittent stream, or the stream bank flags, inland bank flags, go to the location of the former pond.
Right. Understood. Right. My question is an unfair one, because you weren't there to see, when we saw it originally, there was a wood chip pile that actually interfered with a part of the line. You could kind of sight through the pile, and I understand it's been pulled back. I haven't seen that.
Yes, was the wood chip pile, as you look downstream, was it on the right-hand side?
Yeah. Correct.
Yes.
So that wood chip pile, it looked to me like they were just a layer, a single layer, maybe an inch thick at most, of wood chips along the bank of that hill, going all the way up to a driveway access.
Exactly. Yep.
So that was all pulled back except for just, again, a single layer of wood chips. And that looked very good to me, actually. So I just wanted to let you know.
All right. The only thing we didn't know was that there were flags sort of on opposite sides of the wood chip pile. And so when it was pulled back, I didn't know if essentially you're just connecting the flags,
Yes.
as a straight line.
Yes, right at the toe of slope, actually. The flag's connected at the toe of slope, pretty much.
Just to interject too, I think when we were out there during the site walk, it was quite deceiving, because you would have thought that whole area that we were standing on was the wood chip pile, which is where I think you were going with that,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. Which I think what you're saying is it was really just a layer of wood chips that got kind of pushed over the side of the slope.
Yes, exactly, right. That's what it looked like to me. Right, it was just
But it was,
sort of
it was
spread.
pulled back, though.
Yes,
correct?
oh, absolutely, yes.
I mean, it was pretty deep. It was an inch.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just.
walking down it,
Walking down it was tough.
Now it's about an inch is what you.
About an inch, yeah. There were no, I walked down the pile and back up the pile, and I didn't sink at all.
Okay.
Right.
Just to let you know, it was right on the existing soil.
Yep.
Good.
Which is a
Okay.
good thing,
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So then we come to the site stream, the stream on the site. And I went into stream stats, the USGS stream stats, and you'll notice, hopefully you have a copy of the report there.
Yep.
And Figure 2 shows the entire watershed of that stream. That's the figure that's in green at the top and the bottom on if you have it in color. There's another figure that's got blue on the top of the bottom. I delineated the difference. There we go, that's Figure 2, Mr. Chairman, right there. So what that's showing is the red outline is the site location, the site locus, all the parcels, right on top of the USGS topographic quadrangle. There is a red circle there, which is directly adjacent to Carberry Lane, down gradient of the site. And so that is the stream that runs through the site. And it runs, actually, the stream runs pretty much north-south, heading toward the north, and then goes into Balster Brook after it hits Carberry Lane. So that's the location of the stream as USGS.
So the USGS blue line, because I saw it on some maps that Alan Bishop was kind enough to
Yes.
give to us. And because there was no, it didn't show Carberry Lane.
Right.
But I could see the blue line.
Yes.
And I couldn't tell if that was
Understood.
Balster Brook. It essentially
Or-
goes on the north side.
That's correct.
Of Carberry Lane.
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
So Balster Brook is on the north side of Carberry Lane, and this stream is on the south side. So then I took a look at the output, Stream Stats version 3.0. It's very interesting here that the stream On the beta version of number 4, which is supposedly the, the new and improved version of StreamStats, it didn't show. I had to go back to StreamStats 3.0, so there is still some, that's why it's still in beta, perhaps.
Yeah, we call those features.
Exactly, exactly. So then I looked at the flow statistics ungauged site report. Very interesting here. Now, you have a copy of that as well as a
Oh, yeah,
table
right.
in the back. And I'd like to direct your attention to the second series of numbers. The second paragraph of the second series, little table there. The drainage area is 0.12 square miles, or 12/100ths of a square mile, and the percent underlain by sand and gravel or stratified drift is 24.34%. And we know it's forested. They have 96.82% forested. Now, in 310 CMR 10.58 et al., any stream that's more than a half square mile and 75% stratified drift is automatically denoted as a perennial stream. In this case, it's only a fifth of that size and only a third of the stratified drift. In addition, you go to the second to last table from the bottom of that page, and you'll see a statistic called prob paren, as in probability of being perennial. And the USGS regression equation, it's a very complicated equation that they've worked out. They've assigned it a 22% probability of being an intermittent, 22% probability of a perennial stream. I saw the stream, it was just after the rain and snow that we had Sunday into Monday, and the stream wasn't even flowing completely. Furthermore, we had had a pretty heavy storm event 2 weeks before that was anywhere between 1 and 2 inches in the Boston area, and there weren't any indications of heavy flow in the stream from that previous storm event either. So
What would you look for?
Pardon?
What would you look for?
I would look for branches on the sides, I would look for leaves that were moved away, basically flow patterns in the water.
But with the drought condition, we're still in, Steve.
Yes, agreed, but I've seen flow patterns in other streams. I was on a site today in Norwell where there was a flow pattern in the stream. In fact, the leaves had been moved away on this small stream, and it was an intermittent stream, but leaves had been moved away. I will say that in some cases, in some locations on this stream, the leaves had been moved, but not even in the former farm pond at all. There was no indication that water had moved through there in the past 6 months, frankly. So my professional opinion, and I would call it an intermittent stream, even though we're in a drought condition, because of the facts, the numbers that USGS had, and what I saw in the field. Now, that's just my recommendation to you. You are the Conservation Commission, and you can certainly wait for further evidence outside the drought condition if you wish. I'm just giving you that,
Understood.
If I can add one piece to that, before we move on to the next item on the stream classification. To follow up from what Steve was describing, if you remember my September 29th additional information letter, it went through the flow chart on how in accordance with the riverfront regs, on how the streams are classified. So following that methodology that I included and Steve also confirmed independently, is that because the stream is not, there's several factors. One, it doesn't show up on the USGS map. Two, it has a watershed area less than a half square mile. Based on those two items and the less than 75% stratified drift, based on those three items, there isn't a possibility for it to be a perennial stream in accordance with the wetlands protection regulations.
That is
So
correct.
therefore, it's intermittent.
I would say that Mr. Holmes is correct in that case, under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Understood.
Shall we go on?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last item was really interesting. This was the question of whether there was any inland bank up gradient of a PVC pipe that goes under the driveway that accesses 1776. And if I may show you exactly where that is on the plan. There's a shared driveway here from Canton Avenue that goes up to 1726 and then 1776. And may I just, on the plan?
Oh, sure.
Sure. There is a small PVC pipe right in this location here that goes across this driveway. Up gradient of the pipe is I would call it almost an end furrow of a garden. That's really what it looks like to me.
Yep.
That you know, took a plow and it was an end furrow. It's that small of a garden that parallels this driveway. I happened to speak to one of the women who lives in this house. She was walking down with a neighbor, evidently. And I asked her about that furrow, and she said, oh yes, that furrow prevents the water from coming down the hill onto the driveway at 1726, this site right here. There is a beautiful specimen white oak tree that's probably 300 to 400 years old, just after you cross this driveway here. There are no other wetland indicator plants up gradient of this driveway. It's mostly eastern white pine. There's mostly shrub and sapling story. There are a couple of American beeches in here. And there's some landscaping plants, some rhododendrons, and maybe some Sargent crab apples along this driveway here. So and I looked further up gradient, and there doesn't seem to be any wetland area. As in the Wetlands Protection Act, you can have an intermittent stream, but only down gradient of a wetlands resource area. So this area, and then downstream of this PVC pipe, which is almost occluded, I would say it's 75% plus occluded, there is there's a field here down to a woodland right in here. And it's open field with some, I think it's glossy buckthorn shrubs right at a V in the field. It's an open wet, not a wet meadow, it's a grassy meadow, it's an upland meadow. I did not go onto that property, but there were no wetland indicator species except a couple of glossy buckthorns. So in that case, I don't see any wetland resources here. And under the Wetlands Protection Act, there's no inland bank. As to the local bylaw, you do not define bank in your local bylaw. And as I understand, everything falls back toward the Wetlands Protection Act in your bylaw if it's not further defined. And therefore, in my way of thinking, there's no wetland resource, therefore no inland bank on that site. That's just my logic, very simple logic. But sometimes simplicity is the solution.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Questions, Judith?
No, I don't think I have any questions. That was pretty thorough, Steve.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have none. Are we?
Any members of any abutters, first of all, and then members of the public?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Kirk Connors representing Kevin Walker. I don't think we need to stay till midnight at this time, so I will keep this brief. I'll say that we're not here to I think, disagree with any of the technical findings of Mr. Ivas. We very much appreciate the commission taking the time to engage somebody to take a second look at these issues. One question I had was whether the commission had charged him to review the site as a whole or just the areas that had been delineated by ECR. My understanding from our previous meeting was that the site as a whole would be walked to see if anything were missed because of the developer's threat to do somewhere between 58 and 300 units on the site, that we didn't want to miss anything. So I just wanted to ask what the charge from the commission was and whether that is what Mr. Ivas did.
Did you define the scope in your report?
Yes, I didn't talk about looking at the site, but I had a wonderful walk. And in fact, and the reason I did that was, if you'll notice in Figure 1, there is an area best described as the westerly side of the StreamStats watershed area that shows a 70A soil, which is a hydric indicated soil. And I wanted to take a look at that area because that was the only hydric soil on the site. And frankly, I could not find it. Evidently, the trees and shrubs have done a very good job of pulling the water out of the ground on this particular site. So, Deb, you see this? This is this area right here. You might have done some perk tests. It might have been clayey or silty in that area.
The informal perk test that we did only went up from Canton Ave about halfway up, but
I
as,
see.
you know, at the end of these, you started getting into glacial till, so.
Right, exactly. Okay, so
So
it was tilly,
Tilly.
but unusual that I did not find a, let's just say, an area that was obviously a wetland area along that long, narrow, let's see, how wide is it? It's
What
a-
numbers are you, where are
We're
you?
looking at 70A. If you look
All of this.
in the, inside the magenta area, the magenta layer.
Big banana.
Looking at this.
Yes, it looks like a big
Brings
banana,
it-
thank you.
right.
That's very good. Didn't find it. It was really interesting. You know, not unusual, not unusual. Sometimes you have interbedded clays and gravel and till all mixed up together, as you obviously did on the previous location, you know? And there's evidently nothing close to the surface, with water very close to the surface in that area. So to answer your question, sir, yes, I did take a wonderful walk on the property.
And didn't find anything
And did-
additional?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that comes down to, obviously, my client's primary concern interest is near his property, although we've been interested in the site as a whole, and the local bylaw issue as to the commission's jurisdiction under its own bylaw as to that waterway near his property. I understand Mr. Ivas, like the applicant, has taken the position that he believes it is not covered under the bylaw. I'm not sure that from a technical perspective, that's something that's reserved for the commission to interpret its own bylaw and to exercise jurisdiction or not. So I'm not sure that ECR or me or Mr. Ivas can really inform you of how you should apply your own bylaw. You know, I guess the question is, why is it written that way? It seems quite literal that within 100 foot of any bank, and I know we had jokes about ATMs and all that last time, but we're still reading it literally and based on that, and we've also made the argument in our papers from back in November, citing back to the definition of bank within the Wetlands Protection Act, which is exactly what everyone says we should look back to, and that definition does say, or occurs between a water body and an upland. And based on all of our prior discussions, there doesn't seem to be any disagreement that there's an upland, and as to water body, we submit that it is a water body, and it does qualify under the...
What is, in the area where the culvert is, it goes under the driveway?
Right. I mean, basically, there was a suggestion that perhaps it was engineered. I don't know if anybody's established that or not. As far as we know, it's naturally occurring, but there obviously has been some culverting work under the road and some changes to it. But to our mind, it is a natural feature that has a bank, and there's jurisdiction within 100 feet of that bank.
All right, Steve, you mentioned something about defaulting to the Wetlands Protection Act, which, in general, I agree with you. But we tend to have we do distinguish in terms of the hydrological connection that is required under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yes.
Is not in the bylaws, and that's not a default position, but I'm struggling here because I can't remember the exact definition that we use, but we've always distinguished the bylaw definition of a resource area because we do not require that areas of I don't know if it's bordering vegetated wetlands, they don't have to have a hydrological connection under our bylaw.
And I
Of a
know what you
certain
mean.
size.
And that would pertain to an isolated vegetated wetland versus a bordering vegetated wetland, where you
Yes.
guys say, hey, we don't care, it's
Right.
vegetated wetland.
Right.
And we get that. This isn't a vegetated wetland, as Steve said, there isn't any vegetation there. And it's not a bank as we define that. So I get that point of having a hydrologic connection, because you could have an isolated wetland.
Yes.
But you're talking about a vegetated wetland.
And a water body, in my thinking, you've got to have, under the Wetlands Protection Act and your own bylaw, don't you have to have a jurisdictional water body, land under water?
Well, that would be one way to establish jurisdiction, but not the only way.
Right. But a water body, the gentleman said water body, Mr. Connors, is that correct? Said water body, and there's really not a water body there. There's no pond or lake or stream there, intermittent or perennial. That's, again, that's faulting back to the Wetlands Protection Act as, in terms of water body. So I don't see a water body.
Yeah, it becomes, I guess, somewhat tautological.
Yes, it is.
That you're saying that you need to have a wetland under the Wetlands Protection Act to interpret your own bylaw. And, we're reading the bylaw just very literally in the plain language of it, and suggesting that it doesn't say, look to anything defined as a wetland. It doesn't say that. It says with, a water body. It could have said a wetland. It could have been more specific and tied to the WPA, but it's different. So I'm not going to belabor it, but, we have submitted it in our papers, and the request stays on the table, and we submit it to your discretion, how you choose to apply your own bylaw. One request we do have is were the ANRAD to be approved by the commission, that it would be subject to the commission, what you call the potential curveball, that DEP has not yet weighed in on it, and that would be an express condition added to any approval, that it's not valid unless and until DEP provides its approval consistent with as submitted.
I thought about how to structure that, but if we were to make it conditional upon that, it could leave it open for a very long time, because DEP is not famous for
Well,
working
usually
quickly.
not. I have made, in one case, I finally made the call to a DEP person for that Boston project. I
Yes.
made the call to the Northeast region, and actually was issued a file number very soon after the close of the hearing.
That's the file number part of it, and that I get.
And an okay with regard to review for both sides.
And you think that can be done within 21 days?
Yes, it absolutely can be done within 21 days. Whether Southeast Region will do it within 21 days is another question.
Right, I mean, I would much prefer to have them
This is northeast.
get that
Is this
under review
northeast?
off of there.
That's
Oh,
why.
I'm sorry, forgive me.
We're the
Hello,
northeast.
where am I?
Northeast.
It's late at night. If this is Northeast, then yes, absolutely. You should be able to make the call.
Oh, I know we can make the call. I just don't want to get ourselves into like a timing
Understood.
dilemma. And
Right.
I would expect a no comment. I wouldn't expect them to even say approved, or.
I would agree.
I would just say no comment, which I'd be
Right.
comfortable with.
Right.
But under review gives me some cause. Maybe we could do it this way. I mean, I'm just speaking personally, but
No, I agree with
I'm
you, John.
comfortable
I agree.
with what Steve has written, and it conforms to what Brad, you and Deb have presented to us as well. So I would be comfortable voting in favor of approving this ANRAD. But I would much prefer to have some kind of resolution to DEP's position.
Sure. And that's why I would, Mr. Chairman, I would just suggest approve it pending DEP's comment, even if it's a no comment.
Right, just a comment.
Right.
I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between pending and contingent on or conditional on. They seem the same to me, but maybe there's a
They do seem
distinction.
the same to me. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, do you have a position on it? You agree with it?
I
right?
agree, yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we do it that way? Comfortable?
And
Any
then
other-
if you can turn it around, if they can turn it around and close it out in the 21 days, or it's basically just to get them to wrap it up?
So, is that okay if we make the call?
Right. Yes, it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Take it off
definitely,
our
yeah.
shoulders.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's in your best interest.
Oh, of
to-
course,
yeah.
I just didn't want to
Yes.
do it on behalf and,
No, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
That caution and concern and diplomacy.
I'll let them know who to call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Rachel
I
Freed?
know who to call.
Is it Rachel Freed?
Jim Freely is who I've been speaking with. He was the one who was issued the DEP file number and who I spoke to with regard to filing fees on this project.
Okay.
So I would assume I'd start with him first,
Yes.
and if I had any issues, I can
Go to Rachel Freed.
go to Rachel.
Or even Heidi.
Okay.
Davis?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Well, with that basis, any comments, questions from members of the public? Butters, concerned citizens, hearing none? Is there a motion to be made to
So moved.
to issue the
ANRAD.
approval of the
Of the
ANRAD as delineated?
Yes. Yes.
Conditional upon resolution of the
DEP comment.
by DEP.
Mhm, second.
All in favor? Done, thanks.
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great Christmas, everyone.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks,
you too.
Thanks
Great to see
very
you.
much.
Great to see you, thank you.
And you.
Now, not to get technical or logistical, but you have a bill that the applicant will receive. Do you send that to Kathy and then we send it to the applicant, or do you send it directly? How does that work, Kathy?
Well, he can send it to both of us, and then I will receive a check from you, and I will forward it to him, so just we have it on the record that you were paid.
Fine. I'll send it to both of you.
Okay.
Fine.
And should we make the check out to Steve?
Yes.
So that it doesn't have to go through the town, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.
All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Good night now.
Night.
Good night.
Number 8 is a request for a certificate of compliance, 610 Brush Hill Road, continued hearing.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Good evening again.
And this is the house that the neighbors think cost all
Bob
the
Hannigan,
trouble.
representing
Yes.
Lisa and Edward Adams.
Ugh.
Just briefly, when we had the site visit on Saturday, we ventured up to take a look at this property. Ingrid had to recuse herself because I guess she works with Lisa Adams.
Yes.
So Arthur walked the site, and you perhaps discussed it with Arthur.
I did. He indicated, as a subcommittee of one, that he did receive an explanation for the weep hole pipes in the wall, because I saw those, and I think we all saw them when we were there the last time.
Right.
I don't know, a
We
year or
did, we
so
did
ago.
discuss those, yes.
That was one issue, as to where that water was coming from. And it seemed to be some kind of a under-apron drainage system. When I say apron, I'm talking about the apron around the pool. And I know this is one that Craig went up and watched some of the excavation, and he indicated there's a lot of clay there, and it wasn't, nothing would perk there. So I didn't know if they ran, pipes out towards the retaining wall. And it may be a great idea. I'm not saying it's a
Well,
bad
my
thing.
recollection was that they said that they bedded it, and they bedded the pool in gravel.
Yes.
And then they gave it a way to minimize the chance of it floating.
Yes.
The concern was that you don't want to you don't want to build up water underneath the pool because it'll float. It'll lift it up like a boat.
Right.
So, that's
Right.
my recollection. we had that conversation.
Yes, and I agree with that. My
Yeah.
comment about clay was just where it started.
Oh, yeah, yep.
But now, Bob, so, can you help us out here? Because we, for a certificate of compliance, we're always looking for a PE stamp on an as-built basis. But as I understand it, you're not in a position to do that in this case because you weren't part of the pool.
Well, I could perhaps do that if I got, I got some of the data from Kathy, if I got, a plan of what was proposed, and I could compare it with what the as-built that I prepared.
All right.
So I believe the second notice of intent for the in-ground pool was done by one landscape architect or the pool contractor.
Yes.
Yeah, we did the original one for the building the house. And I believe under the one for the pool, they proposed the wall and extending the level spreader, which was done.
Right, yeah, but the only hang-up I've got is that you can't really see what's under there. But I agree with your recitation, that they put the pool in the
Bed of gravel.
bed of gravel and
Yeah.
then ran some drainage lines
Lisa
out.
Adams, I think, commented that she had sent some correspondence to the commission.
I remember there were some photos.
Oh, there were, yeah.
I think, my recollection was that we had some photos of the
Yeah.
excavation, but I'm just off the top of my head. I mean, I'm not.
Well, Craig
Craig
took
took
some pictures.
Craig took some pictures.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I do recall. All right, well, that was one issue, that, where's the water coming from, where's it going to? But when I discussed it with Arthur, he said, I was concerned, is there a lot of water flow? And he said, I didn't see any markings in the grass beneath those weep hole pipes.
Right.
He said it didn't look like there was any drainage
Right.
there. Not that you'd expect a whole lot in a drought, but, if it was some extraordinary amount, you'd expect to see some kind of
Right.
telltale
Yeah, that area
signs.
is grass, and then he mentioned to me that he didn't see any type of disturbance of the, channelization or anything like that, or erosion of the grass in that area, so.
Correct. So I'm okay with that part of it. The second point that I had, and I did this from memory, but when we were there was a pool house or a changing room, and there was a chemical toilet in there. And I can't remember if that was part, in fact, I think it was not part of the
Right.
original design.
It was not, no.
But there was a plastic tube that came out from the same room in the vicinity of, I think it came from the toilet, actually.
Actually, I think I saw that, and I believe the way she explained it was, what they did is, it was required to collect the runoff from the downspouts, and that's an outlet from that, and it was unrelated to the pool. The pool was, the pool
Toilet.
house, the toilet was what they call a clivus.
Sealed?
Yeah. Huh?
It's a sealed unit?
I'm not totally familiar with it, but it's, environmentally friendly. It's, I mean, there's no discharge from it.
Right, it just seemed to come up right at the, when you looked, standing down on the ground next to the retaining wall, looking up at the bottom of the pool house, you can actually see it, the tube, and it comes down from the same room or in the vicinity of where the chemical toilet was. So my concern was, is it connected to that? Is it a discharge from that?
It was a white pipe that was flush, pretty much flush with the ground, was it?
No.
What you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about a plastic, almost clear pipe, that was flexible, that dropped from the floor. You could actually see underneath, if you're on the wetland side,
Yeah.
you're essentially below the pool house, and
Yeah.
you look, you could see it drop
I
down.
didn't notice that, and he didn't point it out, so.
All
but,
right, well,
He seemed to be satisfied with the.
Right, he and I had talked about it before, so, and he said it seemed to be not part of that toilet system, so it's not a discharge from that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The third point was the lights, which I understand is outside of our jurisdiction.
That's
I
what I was
know-
thinking, they're along the back of the line, which is beyond the 100-foot buffer. I don't know if you have a copy of the plan.
That's not it. Wrong one.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
The 100-foot buffer is here, and then,
What's the date on this?
That's the one that I had submitted.
September
previously,
27th.
September 27th.
But we wanted a revised one from the, after
Yeah,
the walk, remember?
John wanted a revised one with a certification on it and a stamp, but this is just for
But we
discussion
also
purposes.
want the playhouse to be
Right,
shown,
right,
remember?
right.
Oh, yeah, we haven't gotten to that. I guess there's
Oh, I
another
thought-
house there.
Okay, I thought you
Yeah,
wanted,
it was my feeling that, come here and discuss the site walk, and then Arthur did want that playhouse there. I mean, I didn't include it initially, because it's on posts, and it didn't seem to be totally permanent. I mean, the posts were in the ground, but, I mean, it wasn't,
I don't remember the hot tub being part of the plan either.
I don't either.
Do we have the,
well, there's the last one there.
this
And
one?
you're saying the lights are outside of the 100-foot, all
they're
of
all in
them
the
are
back.
Last
outside?
folder in the pile.
Bottom?
No, the one your
Right here.
hand's on.
Gotcha. Oh, I'm looking at a note here that says the question that arose, and the highlighted one is, with regard to the grout between the pavers, the grout material is not impermeable, nor is it concrete grout. It is stabilizer sand that is commonly used to prevent weeds from growing up through the pavers. He did test that, Arthur, and he told me tonight that he said it's clear to him that it is permeable.
It is permanent.
It is,
Okay.
right. So he was satisfied that that's not an issue.
Okay.
The long pipe extending from the stone wall, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about a clear pipe that dropped
Okay.
down from the same end of the pool house where the toilet is. Landscape lighting, I thought there were landscape lights over.
I thought so too, along here.
In this corner.
But yeah,
There are some trees in this corner.
I thought they were all along here. And they're not the kind of light that you talked about that are the
100% cutoff.
cutoff lights. Then they weren't, they were facing
They were
up
up,
as
they were
well.
facing up, but
Yeah.
I swear there was one, at least in this
Yeah.
corner right here. But Arthur's comment was he didn't see any sign of birds or squirrels or anything else. He said he thought it was like the hunting ground for all the,
Hawks.
predator and the hawks
Hawks, yeah.
from the Blue Hills. It looked like they had cleaned them out.
Or else it's so sterile, nobody lives there.
True, too much light, it all took off.
Indeed.
But the hot tub is what I'm looking for, because I don't remember that as being on the plan. But what I do remember is that there was no playhouse. 9/27/16, that's the one that we just got. Certificate of compliance, landscape plan.
Somebody to hold
Yeah,
something?
take a look at the landscape plan, see if there's.
Hot tub's here.
Is it?
So they call it a raised spa.
Is there a playhouse?
No. There's
Which
a
one is
play
this?
area, there's a swing set play area, there's a storage shed that they built, the raised spa.
All right, so what is this one?
It's a
here?
it's a mulched swing set area.
Yeah, it's a swing set. When I did the as-built,
That's it?
yeah, it's since been closed in. There's a little bit of a, sort of a dollhouse on top.
Oh, so
But-
this is a swing set with a
Swing set with a little, yeah,
the house on
yeah,
it, with
yeah.
the roof, the little canvas roof thing.
was there.
It's not little, it's not little.
Yeah, but you know the raised ones that have the jungle gym, this is not that?
I mean, like the forts they used to have when our kids.
Yeah, and then you have
This is
the,
about 10 times the size of that.
oh, really?
And
No,
if
this
you
is a
go
built
by,
structure.
I'll have-
Yeah.
This is an
Submit a
entire
picture.
built
Probably
structure.
best that I can forward it to
What's
you.
that? You did take a picture?
I did not, but
Okay.
they said it's got one.
Okay. Is that an old picture, Bob, before there was built up or around or enclosed?
That's in progress. You can see the swing. Slide, I'm sorry. You can see the slide up the back.
Yeah.
That was closed in. I don't think it was 10 times. You know, it was a decent size, but it wasn't.
You had a staircase? Wow, okay.
Sounds very nice. Push, push,
Had to match
push.
the house.
Yeah, very nice.
But, you know, I thought it was sort of a temporary structure, so that's why I didn't show, I mean, I can show it. It's not a problem, but it's, you know,
Is it
it's not.
movable? Is it movable, or is it built on that site? Is it something that can be
it's-
moved and, or is it attached to
It
the
depends upon how much
site?
work you want to put into moving it.
Well, how
There's-
attached
there's-
is it?
There's 4x4 columns that go into the ground.
They do go into the ground.
They go into the ground, yeah. So, you know, it probably could be moved. You know, it's not like on a concrete
How
foundation.
far into the ground do they go?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, like sonotubes?
I think it's just, I didn't notice, to be honest with you, I think it was, might have been just
3 feet.
4x4s. They might have been encased in the sonotubes, but I didn't happen to notice. I wouldn't imagine that they would have been flush with the ground, you know, being a play area, they probably didn't want to have them sticking out. But, I mean, I can show it, that's,
If you could take a photo, that would be great. You take a,
I can do both, yeah.
yeah, back up and take a photo, you can see the whole thing in one shot. That would be perfect. So, my concern, it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't have to do with the final approval, but it has to do with the conversation about the subsurface water flows. We don't have any way of assessing or analyzing that.
I know.
And we don't,
We just heard from a lot of neighbors.
we just heard from a lot of neighbors, but we don't have, there's no realistic way to be able to evaluate whether or not that exists or whether what's being
Yeah.
proposed is going to have an impact.
Yeah.
And I can understand how that the foundations going into the ground could have a significant impact and modify the flows and therefore force it to someplace where it wasn't before, or exacerbate a previous flow. But I don't know how we protect people or evaluate that to be able to use that as a point of discussion.
It's a great question, because it seems from what the neighbors are saying, before this house was built, they weren't getting flooded.
Right.
Or there was a break in the road and they got flooded, but mostly because this house was built and we okayed it in the wetland bordering,
Yep.
they started getting flooded all the time. So there should be some way we have of being able to distinguish and ascertain when a house being built in the buffer zone is going to cause flooding.
I don't think there's any way we can do that.
So it's
And
ver-
and I think it has to do with the, I'm sorry, I
No,
think
go
it has to do with, without having an assessment, and even if we had an assessment of the underground well, kind of, not wells, but springs and kind of streams underground, even if we knew exactly where they were, there would be, unless, I don't think we'd be able to assess the impact of putting a house in a specific location would be. Sorry, what were you saying?
It's really difficult. I'll cite one example. Last house on the left on Carberry Lane.
Yep.
Frank Corcoran built it, and we did it was on septic, we did a septic, it's in the front, did a perk test. I mean, it was the best bony gravel you'd ever see. I mean, it was, you know, you couldn't saturate it, you know? So that was done. They built the house further back, and
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you.
one, I don't know, spring or winter or something like that, I mean, there was, the foundation was just flooded, the basement. I mean, it was pouring in. Frank put a sump pump in, you know, huge sump pump.
Yeah.
That couldn't handle it. Then he had a second one, and that barely handled it. And it just happened, the house happened to be set in where there was an old underground former stream.
Yeah.
So, what we did was, first of all, he said, well, let's put an interceptor, you know, in front of the house. I said, well, Frank, you gotta go deep, you know, so we went down about 8 feet or so, and then brought it across the back, and there was no way to daylight it, to bring it to daylight.
Yeah.
So, the next lot was already built, And between the next lot and the second next lot, there was a culvert. I don't know if you remember on Carberry Lane.
Yeah, I
Cuts
remember.
across, yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
remember when it happened, because we went out there after the sump pumps were
Yeah,
pumping.
yeah. So anyway, they needed an easement across that guy's property. So we installed the French drain, deep French drain, big pipe, perforated pipe across the back, stopped at the property, the lot line, and like that, it stopped. It didn't even need to daylight it, it just.
Found someplace to go.
Yeah, it intercepted the old stream bed and just dissipated into the, I think they eventually ended up maybe connecting to that trench, I'm not sure, but they created the easement, and the possibility was there to.
But you had no idea going into it that you were gonna run into that.
Absolutely
And
none. I mean, with the type of material that was there, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And your assessment would show that it was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we did perk tests for the septic system, and
Well,
it was the same, the same
Yeah.
material for the foundation. It just happened to be in the wrong spot.
Well, in this case, we're talking about soils that are predominantly clay, which have very, if any, kind of flow through them. So it's,
Over the
Oh, I
years.
don't think there's anything we can do.
right, I mean, how do
Plus,
you,
over the years, I mean, I hear a lot of stories from neighbors, they have more experience,
Yeah.
firsthand experience than I do.
Yeah.
But still, I think I'm a little bit qualified to interpret things. And I think a lot of their problems aren't from Perkins Lane, they're from Hume Lane, which is between Bose Hill Road and Perkins Lane.
Yep.
Similar to Perkins Lane. There's 5 or 6 houses there that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And that drains right onto this.
that comes down that way?
Sunrise lot, yeah. No.
Yeah, but then there's no way of knowing. And the best that we can do is is basically improve the surface flows, the runoff, the impervious
I think
area.
also have this extra scrutiny, putting so much being built.
Well, one of the things is Herrick Drive.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a couple of houses up from Craig. They were putting a swimming pool in, and we get into a big discussion about if you put like a bathtub into the wetland or close to the wetland, it's going to have an impact.
It does.
And I remember us trying to, calculate what's the sort of the displacement that's going to hit
Yeah.
the neighbors.
Right.
And it did hit the neighbors. They put the pool in, and it did hit the neighbors.
It did.
It did, yeah. But there were remediation efforts that were made and seemed to have worked to protect the neighbors. But this goes back along. This is probably 15 years ago.
See, I just look at this
we've got a
lot, and it
pool
just
in
looks
there.
like a mistake. It's just too much. It's too much within the 100. It's too much in the buffer. There's so much development. Logically, it doesn't make sense to me. It should have been
What
pushed
doesn't?
back, that it's so much being built in the buffer right there. It just logically doesn't make sense. That house should have been pushed back. It shouldn't be so much being built right there. It shouldn't have been allowed.
One thing I noticed,
Oh, you're talking about this house, you're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about 610.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
one thing I noticed is, as regards to runoff, there are a number of components when you consider runoff, and this pool area, when they built it, prior to it being built, the rear lot sloped at a pretty
Yeah. Yep.
decent slope.
Right.
And now essentially it's pretty level.
Yeah.
So, you've got less rate of runoff off the property because it's relatively level. That's one of the components, is the slope.
So you think that surcharges the subsurface?
The surcharge for,
Do you think that that's now all of the water that used to run off into the wetland at the what is that, the east side of the property is now being contributed to any of the subsurface flow?
I think eventually it goes into the wetlands, but it's just goes in at a slower rate.
A slower rate.
Because it's, because it's essentially level as opposed to
Right.
the slope of the rear yard prior to that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit, the little bit more impervious, but although the grout is permeable, as Arthur had said. But, that's just one of the contributary.
I think
And also
talking
too, the level spreader was extended, so.
Yeah. I think talking to the Haggertys and finding out whether or not what has happened to them and whether it has improved over time would be, I mean, it doesn't really affect this, but just to understand what happened and where we are and.
I agree with you. I think that's a good idea. And maybe, Kathy, can you reach out? I mean, or you can
Oh,
feel free.
yeah, I know Deborah, yeah.
Oh, you
know-
do? Okay.
Yeah, they're St. Michael's, they're,
Yeah, okay. And I think that's a good idea. But getting back to 610, is there any kind of, are they looking for the certificate of compliance in a particular time frame, or is this just sort of the normal course?
I think they're.
They're not refinancing
This is,
tomorrow.
you know, yeah, exactly. They're not
They wanna be
selling.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to have it cleared up.
All right, because
You
what
know,
I'd like to
Lee-
do is,
M-
go ahead.
Melissa Adams is an attorney, I'm not sure about Edward, but, you know, they want to
Okay.
cross the Ts
I
and dot
just-
the Is.
My suggestion is we do get a picture of that, because we tried to stop people from ignoring our order of conditions. And this other house, I'd like to get a picture of it. If you could do that, then we
Sure.
could kick this
Yeah,
over
I can show
till
it on the
January
plan.
17th. That make sense?
Yep, sounds good.
And I thought Arthur told me that all the lights were outside of the 100-foot. Now, maybe they moved it, because my memory is that when we were there, the lights were in this corner as well as, along the whole back.
Along the whole back
The
of
whole
the
back.
fence, yeah.
What type, I'll take a look to see what,
They were up lights.
were they attached to the fence, or were they?
No, they were in the trees. They were right at the base of the tree, but they're lighting up the tree from beneath. And I remember when we were there, Judith was saying that, the birds are gonna, leave town, and although Arthur thinks that's the hawks, but they did leave town. They went to bird heaven. But I do think
I'll
that
take a
they
look.
were.
I think
we were looking at different areas behind the swing set and all that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they moved it, because I don't know, is that
Well,
where
Arthur did-
the house is? The
swing
house,
set.
the
Arthur did.
The playhouse.
the playhouse, yeah.
Yeah.
Arthur did walk outside the fence between that white vinyl fence and the 25-foot non-disturb zone, and went almost back to the back corner. And at that time, we didn't discuss lights, but, he was looking at, I think, more for erosion and,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So I'll take a look.
Take a look, all right.
But they were essentially to illuminate trees?
Yes. It was just decorative.
Yeah.
Make it look pretty. All right, anything else on this one? If we can defer this until January 17th? All right, that makes sense. That's good, thanks. What else do we have
Okay.
here?
And a third, Merry Christmas.
That's it, you're done? Hey, Merry Christmas to you.
Christmas.
Thanks, Bob.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you.
Next is number 9, request for certificate of compliance, 106 Hillside. Do we have that? Were we just waiting for a,
No, they did the inspection on Saturday. Answering, but they loved it.
yes, that's the pool, I'm sorry. When I saw Hillside Street, I was thinking that, was Marion trying to get us a stamped plan, or do we ever get the second stamped plan for 395?
Yes, we did.
Okay, all right. So 106 Hillside, yes, he was quite happy. He said they did a great job. They did not put in a pool house.
Oh, good.
They left that off. We'd approved it, but they left it off. Is that what you're looking at? That 106?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, he said the pool looked great, and he was in favor of issuing the certificate of compliance.
Sounds fine. I can't
Can I-
remember where this is on Hillside Street. Where is it on Hillside Street?
Oh, this is, yeah,
Along
this is the one,
driveway.
this is the one that backs up to the
Thomas.
the
Yes.
Thomas lot, right? And
Right.
they, right.
That's where it is.
Oh,
yeah,
this is
that one.
nice. They did beautiful.
Yeah, that Arthur was very impressed with it.
That one, yes, yes, yes.
Oh, they didn't do the pool house. Oh, good. Yep. There was a tree you wanted them to save that doesn't look like it
Doesn't look like they
survived.
saved it. Looks like
Wasn't
there's
there?
a lot
There was
of
a tree back
sun,
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
near the
go on,
pool.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Now that
I
let
love
me see
the look of the split rail fence.
Yeah, that
that
is nice.
looks-
It does look nice.
You know, rather than these plastic, white
Oh,
plastic
God, yeah.
the split rail fence is traditional New England, you know?
Yeah.
True.
Rather than these
So
white
true.
plastic last forever.
Yeah.
So is this a plan stamp? Do we have? Yes, it is.
November
Okay.
4th, yeah.
And does it say in substantial compliance with the magic words there?
There's a letter.
Is there a letter? Oh, yeah, there was
You
a
got it?
letter. Yes.
It's almost midnight.
No.
No, that's another one. That's not it.
Feels that way.
Yeah, I know it.
Here it is.
You got it?
Here it is, John.
We hereby certify that we have inspected the project, completed in compliance with the order of conditions, improved plans referenced therein. The site was inspected for compliance November 4th. Good. That's Darren Grady, PE. So that's good with me. Any further thoughts, questions, concerns? Nope. Abutters, members of the public? Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Same comment?
You don't second it?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay,
You can second it, no?
All in favor?
very good.
All right, good, so that one issues. 610 is deferred to January 17th, and this one was approved.
Good.
Do we have anything else? Can we go back over one thing? 750, I'm sorry. All right, so that the 739 Blue Hill Avenue was continued until January 17th.
Correct.
And they're gonna come back, Jim Burke is gonna size the culverts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because on that one, we need to be sure, and we have to remind ourselves in January, that all the homeowners have to kind of sign off, or
Yes.
at least a representative has to sign off that the O&M plan will be supported by all of them.
Exactly.
And Kathy, can you check to see
there's
if we
enough-
do, if
yeah,
we
sorry.
own any of that property there or have
Controlling interest.
control, interest, something?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in that, and if the whole thing flooded and it was the culvert that was actually across Blue Hills Ave, then this is, and it's not irrelevant, but it's a less significant piece,
Yes.
but there's no reason not to improve the situation while we're here.
Sure.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And if it's a 100-year storm and it overtops the whole driveway, nothing we can do about it.
Right, they're not, yeah. Okay.
All right, that's good. So we are
Motion to adjourn.
second,
Third.
favor.
Right, done.
We're adjourned. Thanks.
Hey, you guys don't leave